Chapter 681. His words are my words. Tang Hao's voice was very calm, so calm that it made people's hearts palpitate. As his calm voice fell, the entire arena boiled. If they did not hear and see it with their own eyes, who would believe that the number one of the 3,000 small worlds would say such a thing? Who was Nie Tian? Was he worth Tang Hao's effort? Gu Xuanmiao and Qiu Shinfeng's faces froze when they heard Tang Hao's words. They did not know what to say. Mo Zhaojing's face froze for a moment. Then it was replaced by viciousness. He stared at Tang Hao like a wolf and said coldly, "Tang Hao, you're really going to turn against the Mo family for him?" For Nie Tian, Tang Hao wanted to slaughter the entire Mo family. This was something no one could imagine. If Tang Hao had turned against the Mo family because of Tang 13, then it would have been understandable. However, to turn against the Mo family because of Nie Tian, who had nothing to do with the Mo family, was a little unreasonable. Tang Hao's face was terrifyingly calm. He said coldly, "Brother Mo, I can't explain it to you, but you're wrong in this matter. Let that girl go. There's still time. And if I don't let her go..." Mo Zhaojing's lips curled into a cold smile. Since he'd already come this far, how could Mo Zhaojing stop? He could also see that Tang Hao seemed to be very respectful towards Nie Tian, almost to the point of subservience. Tang Hao is so respectful towards Nie Tian, not for others to see, but because Nie Tian's status was very high, unreachable. Mo Zhaojing was a bit regretful now, but this trace of regret disappeared in an instant. His viciousness and shrewdness were far above Mo's. He knew that even if he stopped now and Tang Hao was willing to let him go, Nie Tian would not let him go. Since it was like this, then he would fight to the death. Mo Zhaojing. Tang Hao's voice suddenly rose like thunder, resounding through the entire arena. He roared furiously, "I'm saving you. You don't even know who you're facing. Don't do anything wrong and put the Mo family in an irrecoverable situation." Tang Hao was soft-hearted and did not want to see a tragic ending. He gave Mo Zhaojing a final warning not to repeat the same mistake. Mo Zhaojing's expression froze and his gaze trembled. He could tell that Tang Hao was not exaggerating. Nie Tian's status must be terrifyingly high. At this moment, Mo Zhaojing started to hesitate. However, at this time, Mo Feng suddenly took a step forward and said, "Patriarch, young Master Mo Yu's Yuan Meridian has been destroyed." After Mo Feng appeared, Mo Zhaojing handed Mo Yu over to him. "His elemental meridian is crippled?" Mo Zhaojing was startled. After sensing for a moment, it was indeed true. His primordial spirit was destroyed, and his primordial meridians were crippled. Mo Yu had thoroughly become a cripple. Nie Tian narrowed his eyes and frowned. He immediately understood that it was Mo Feng who destroyed Mo Yu's Yuan meridians to frame him. Nie Tian didn't explain anything because he knew that even if he did, Mo Zhaojing wouldn't believe him. Mo Zhaojing's hesitant gaze suddenly became firm. His eyes were filled with ferocity and ruthlessness. He had made up his mind to make Nie Tian pay the price. Nie Tian knew that there was no room for negotiation. A hint of determination appeared in his eyes. He took a step forward and said, "Mo Zhaojing, tell me your conditions. As long as you let her go, I am willing to agree to all your conditions. If you hurt her, I will remove the Mo family from the 3,000 small worlds." His calm voice suppressed his anger and made people's hearts palpitate. "My conditions?" Mo Zhaojing smiled coldly and roared, "My condition is that you have to be the same as my son." "How is it the same?" Nie Tian asked in a low voice. Mo Zhaojing's face was cold, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. He said coldly, "Take 3 palms from me. After 3 palms, whether you die or not, I will let her go." "Mo Zhaojing, are you crazy?" Before Mo Zhaojing finished speaking, Tang Hao became furious and roared, "You are an expert at the pinnacle of the spirit wheel. What's the difference between letting a 3rd-tier spirit will take 3 palms from you and killing him?" When Gu Xuanmiao and Qiu Shinfeng heard Mo Zhaojing's words, they were stunned and widened their eyes. They couldn't believe that Mo Zhaojing would be so shameless. Nie Tian was indeed very strong, but he couldn't be compared to Mo Zhaojing. Even Tang Hao would be crippled if he didn't die after taking 3 palms from Mo Zhaojing, let alone Nie Tian. At this moment, the entire martial arena became deathly silent. Everyone's eyes were focused on Nie Tian, waiting for his answer. In everyone's eyes, Nie Tian would definitely die after taking 3 palms from Mo Zhaojing. How would Nie Tian choose? All right. To everyone's astonishment, Nie Tian didn't hesitate at all to make his decision. I agree, teacher. As soon as Nie Tian finished speaking, a few voices suddenly sounded and 2 figures appeared. It was Zhang Yifeng and Duan Melu. However, no one noticed that Tang Hao also shouted softly at this moment. His voice was as soft as a mosquito, but it was extremely painful. Elder Nie Tian. In the next moment, more voices sounded. Meng Fanchen, Gu Yi, and the others also appeared. When Meng Fanchen heard that something happened at the arena, he immediately stopped the alchemist competition and rushed over without stopping. All of you can leave. Nie Tian nodded slightly without any fear in his eyes. Mo Zhaojing felt the gazes of the surrounding people, and his eyelids trembled. He said, Nie Tian, you have to promise me that after 3 palms, no matter what the result is, no one can take revenge on the Mo family. Seeing Tang Hao and Meng Fanchen in front of him, Mo Zhaojing was worried that the Tang family and the Alchemist Guild would take revenge. Mo Zhaojing, you shameless! Tang Hao roared angrily. Mo Zhaojing's shamelessness made his body tremble. Nie Tian's eyes darkened and immediately said, Tang Hao, Guild Master Meng, this is a personal grudge between me and Mo Zhaojing. This is a personal matter between me and Mo Zhaojing. No matter what the result is, please do not interfere. This, Meng Fanchen's face was full of hatred. He didn't know what to say. Oh, Tang Hao was so agitated that he almost shouted. This is an order. Nie Tian turned around and looked at Tang Hao, saying indifferently, yes. Tang Hao was shocked and angry, but in the end, he could only nod helplessly. He knew Nie Tian's personality. Once he decided on something, he would not change it. Everyone retreated several thousand meters away. Only 2 figures were left in the air, Nie Tian and Mo Zhaojing. Nie Tian nodded and turned around to look at Mo Zhaojing. With a face full of disdain, he said indifferently, make your move. Little bastard, you're courting death. Nie Tian's calmness inexplicably made Mo Zhaojing even more furious. He took a step forward and roared. His entire body's aura increased crazily. The God Wheel space was completely opened, and even the space was frozen. Boom! Mo Zhaojing's Yuan meridians were operating crazily. His entire body's aura increased to the extreme. With a loud bang, he struck out with his palm. The sound of thunder could be heard in the air. Endless Yuan Qi gathered together, and the oppressive aura was extremely strong. Chapter 682. In the air, Mo Zhaojing's terrifying palm was actually a giant palm with white bones dripping from it. It had a great momentum and an eerie aura, making it extremely strange. So powerful, the crowd trembled. Mo Zhaojing was indeed a warrior at the peak of the spirit wheel level. The power of this palm was definitely stronger than that of Nie Tian and Mo after activating their giant spiritual body. It was likely that Nie Tian wouldn't be able to withstand this palm. Nie Tian stood in the air without any expression on his face. His entire body was filled with a terrifying sword intent. His entire person was like a sharp sword that traversed the heavens and the earth. Countless pairs of eyes stared at the figure in the air. No one knew what would happen next. Tang Hao and the others behind Nie Tian had their hearts in their throats. They didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. Boom! The white bone palm came crashing down. Its violent aura was overwhelming and seemed to be able to destroy everything. Just as the white bone palm was about to hit Nie Tian, the air suddenly shook. The power of heaven and earth suddenly changed. There was a loud rumble on the ground. The arena, which was hundreds of meters in radius, seemed to be lifted up by a huge force. It suddenly rose and formed an earthen wall in front of Nietion. Boom! The next moment, the white bone palm hit the earthen wall. A huge force completely exploded. The earthen wall couldn't withstand this huge force and directly collapsed. In an instant, gravel flew everywhere and dust filled the air. Bang! The power of the palm instantly fell on Nietion. His figure shook and a wave of sword intent surged out to resist the destructive force. Nietion took a few steps back and suddenly stopped. A trace of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. He smiled indifferently and spat out a word, the first palm. The first palm, with its shocking power, was actually blocked by Nietion. Everyone's eyes were wide open. They couldn't believe the scene in front of them. Mo Zhaojing's palm was actually blocked by Nietion. Furthermore, it seemed that it was very easy and he wasn't injured at all. Phew! Tang Hao, Meng Fanshun, and the others breathed a sigh of relief when they saw that. No one would have thought that Nietion's strength would be so terrifying. Not only did he not die from Mo Zhaojing's attack, he wasn't even heavily injured. Meng Fanshun knew that even if he was at his peak, it wouldn't be easy for him to take the attack head-on. In the entire 3,000 lesser realms, Tang Hao was the only one who could withstand Mo Zhaojing's palm effortlessly. Although it wasn't effortless for Nietion, it was still very easy. From other people's point of view, Nietion easily received Mo Zhaojing's palm, but Nietion himself knew that he didn't know how he received this palm. Just now, he had used the Annihilation Earth Seal with the strongest defense among the 3 seals of the God of War and his Sword of the God of War to block Mo Zhaojing's attack. Even so, he was still injured. If he didn't have the Origin Star Stone and the 9-star Dragon Vein physique, he would have been severely injured even if he didn't die. Mo Zhaojing was indeed one of the top figures in the 3,000 lesser realms. The power of his palm was indeed powerful. Nietion was surprised, but Mo Zhaojing was shocked. His body stiffened, and his face turned the color of a pig's liver. He thought that even if his palm couldn't kill Nietion, it would at least severely injure him. He didn't expect the result to be like this. The martial arts technique that Nietion mastered was too terrifying. It was beyond Mo Zhaojing's imagination. Come on, the second palm. Nietion wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stepped forward. His aura was imposing. You're asking for it. Mo Zhaojing's vicious voice came out from his throat. His aura increased by another level, and his monstrous battle intent filled the space within a few hundred meters. The entire space was completely frozen. Boom! He gathered all the origin energy in his body and struck another palm. In the air, a whistling sound could be heard, and an even larger white bone palm appeared. The air was cold, as though it was being torn apart by a huge force. Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly. The sword of the god will outside his body suddenly bloomed, and he suddenly stabbed forward. Seeing this scene, the crowd gasped. Nietion was actually going to fight head-on. Wasn't he crazy to fight head-on with a warrior at the pinnacle of the god wheel with the strength of the 3rd tier of the god wheel? No! Seeing this scene, Tang Hao could no longer remain calm and directly cried out. However, it was too late. Nietion's expression was solemn. Without any hesitation, the sword of the god wheel exploded with a dazzling light that shot into the sky. The sword intent was filled with a mighty force, and even the power of thunder surged. Boom! The white bone palm and the sword of the god wheel collided. The air shook violently, and then there was a slight pause. Boom! In the next moment, an invisible force exploded from the center of the collision and spread in all directions. Danger! The crowd felt the vast and powerful force and cried out in alarm. Some people were already so scared that their faces turned pale, and they were completely petrified. The enormous power was like a hurricane that swept past, causing the entire martial arena to tremble. Countless people could not withstand the spreading force and vomited blood. Some even fainted on the spot. These people were thousands of meters away from the center of the martial arts arena, but the force was still so terrifying. This showed how much force Nietion and Mo Zhaojing, who were at the center of the collision, had to bear. In the sky, a figure suddenly retreated. Before he could stop, a line of blood had already appeared. Nyetian retreated dozens of meters. The proud sword wings appeared on his back, and he finally stabilized his body. However, at this moment, he was in an extremely sorry state. His whole body was dripping with blood, and there were frightening knife wounds on his skin. One could even see the eerie white bones. On the other hand, Emo Zhaojing's clothes were tattered, and his body was trembling, but he was not injured. After all, he was a warrior at the pinnacle of the God Wheel. In a head-on collision, Nyetian was far inferior. Not dead, Emo Zhaojing stabilized his body. Seeing that Nyetian was seriously injured, his face was not filled with joy, but with shock and confusion. His palm was actually blocked by Nyetian's sword. Although the latter was seriously injured, this was still not the result he wanted. What he wanted was for Nyetian to die. Nyetian is still alive. Everyone saw the bloody figure in the sky and were dumbfounded. Their eyeballs were about to pop out, and they could not believe that Nyetian was still alive. Teacher, Tang Hao was so sad that he was about to cry. His own teacher was forced to this point by Emo Zhaojing, but he could only watch from the side. How could he feel good in his heart? He hated himself for not being more forceful and letting Emo Zhaojing take the initiative. Nyetian is already seriously injured. Can he withstand the third palm strike? The next moment, the hearts of the crowd trembled as they speculated. Emo Zhaojing, I am willing to take the third palm strike on behalf of Sir Nyetian. Suddenly, Tang Hao's voice was heard. He took a step forward and said solemnly, I will not retaliate. Even if I am killed by you, I will have no regrets. The crowd was stunned by Tang Hao's sudden action. He wanted to use his own life to exchange for Nyetian's life. Who exactly was Nyetian to Tang Hao? Chapter 683. In the void, Nyetian's figure appeared in front of Emo Zhaojing. He stared at Emo Zhaojing with a sinister smile and said, Emo Zhaojing, come on, the third palm strike. Emo Zhaojing, you are a warrior at the peak of the Spirit Wheel realm, but you can't even kill a warrior at the third tier of the Spirit Wheel realm with 2 palms. What a piece of trash. His voice reverberated in the void. It was the most ruthless mockery for Emo Zhaojing. As Nyetian spoke, his body shook. His blood-stained clothes were torn to shreds, revealing his strong muscles. Inside his body, surging power burst out, and the air was filled with a strong life force. Under the gaze of countless pairs of eyes, the wounds on Nyetian's body healed at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. All of this was too strange. What kind of power was hidden in Nyetian's body to be able to heal his wounds in an instant? Rumor had it that warriors at the heavenly evolution realm had the will of heaven in their bodies, which could evolve into life force and heal wounds in an instant. However, Nyetian was clearly not a warrior at the heavenly evolution realm. How could he heal his wounds in an instant? This was too unbelievable. The power that Nyetian displayed was beyond everyone's imagination. Dragon energy. It's the power of the divine dragon. Suddenly, someone noticed something and exclaimed. Everyone was stunned, but they immediately realized that the power that surged out of Nyetian's body was dragon energy. It was dragon energy that was healing his wounds at an extremely fast speed. Nyetian was made of flesh and blood. How could his body produce dragon energy? Everyone swallowed hard. Everything that they saw from Nyetian was so shocking that they were almost numb. That's right, the power that surged out of Nyetian's body was dragon energy. Just now, Nyetian suddenly felt that the 9 dragon-shaped energy meridians in his body became unusually active. Emo Zhaojing's palm strike seemed to have stimulated the potential of the 9-star dragon meridians, and the 9 dragon-shaped energy meridians suddenly erupted with powerful dragon energy. Streams of dragon energy surged within Nyetian's body, causing all the meridians in his body to become active. There seemed to be an endless amount of power in his body. Everyone could sense that the dragon chi around Nyetian was getting stronger and stronger. His aura was getting stronger and stronger, as if it would not stop. The sudden scene caused Mo Zhaojing's eyes to widen. His expression became painful and complicated. Not only did he fail to kill Nie Tian with his full strength, but he had instead stimulated some sort of powerful energy within the latter's body. How would he accept this? He broke through. The next moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt the power in his body skyrocket again. He looked inside his body and suddenly discovered that his strength had actually advanced to the 4th tier of the divine wheel. The surrounding people also immediately noticed that Nie Tian's aura had become tyrannical, and their expressions became extremely astonished. Who would have thought that not only did Mo Zhaojing's 2 palm strikes not kill Nie Tian, but it also inexplicably helped him increase his strength by 1 tier. The power of the 9-star dragon vein allowed Nie Tian's strength to increase by 1 tier. The dragon vein in his body had changed again, and it looked more like a dragon now. Damn it, Mo Zhaojing was about to go crazy. He roared angrily, and his voice became hoarse. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth curled up slightly. He took a step forward and said coldly, "The 3rd palm strike come?" With the increase in strength and the evolution of the 9-star dragon vein, Nie Tian's defense had greatly increased. He was confident that he could deal with Mo Zhaojing's 3rd palm strike. "Nie Tian, if I don't kill you, my name is not Mo Zhaojing." Mo Zhaojing was flustered and exasperated. His face turned the color of an eggplant, and his eyes were bloodshot. His eyeballs were about to pop out. "The 3rd palm strike will take your life." Mo Zhaojing's aura surged crazily, and a lotus made of white bones appeared behind him. The lotus bloomed layer by layer, and what it emitted was not a fragrance, but a bloody and violent aura. Demon Bone White Lotus. Seeing this, Tang Hao's slightly relaxed face suddenly darkened, and he uttered a name. The white bone lotus behind Mo Zhaojing was called the Demon Bone White Lotus, and it was his origin spirit. This time, he really did not care about anything else. He directly used the giant spirit true body to explode with the most terrifying attack. He must take Nie Tian's life. Nie Tian's eyes focused when he saw the Demon Bone White Lotus behind Mo Zhaojing's back. He actually felt a strange life force, and this aura actually made the dragon vein in his body become active again. It really is the Demon Bone White Lotus. Inside the Primal Chaos original coffin, Demon Lord Corpse Luo's voice suddenly sounded, and his eyes became hot. "Corpse Luo, you know this kind of origin spirit?" Nie Tian was slightly stunned. Demon Lord Corpse Luo chuckled and said, "Master, the Demon Bone White Lotus is one of the 3 great magical flowers of the demon race, and it has an extremely strong life force. The demonic dragons are carnivorous spiritual beasts, but they only eat one kind of flower, and that is the Demon Bone White Lotus. It is said that the Demon Bone White Lotus can stimulate the divine dragon power in the demonic dragons. Unfortunately, there are so many demonic dragons in the demon world, but not one has truly activated the divine dragon power." Listening to Corpse Luo's explanation, Nie Tian slowly understood something. He had seen the demonic dragons in his previous life. They were an extremely powerful rank 9 spiritual beast, and under his sword Absolute Heaven Slash, countless demonic dragons had died. Rumor has it that the demonic dragons were the descendants of the ancient divine dragons, and were a subspecies of the divine dragons. They had the blood of the divine dragons in their bodies, but they could not activate it, so they could not be compared to the real divine dragons. Since the Demon Bone White Lotus could stimulate the divine dragon power of the demonic dragons, it was not surprising that Mo Zhaojing's 2 palms could stimulate the 9-star dragon vein power in Nie Tian's body. "Master, Mo Zhaojing's Demon Bone White Lotus primordial spirit is a little strange. It is more powerful than the ordinary Demon Bone White Lotus. No wonder this person can be compared to Tang Hao, who has the ghost eye." Corpse Luo's voice sounded again, and he reminded Nie Tian, "His next palm is no small matter. Master, you must be careful." Nie Tian nodded solemnly, and he became more cautious. "Die." Mo Zhaojing's furious voice sounded, and he slapped out a powerful palm. A demon bone white lotus bloomed in the air, and a bone-chilling aura pervaded the air. The demon bone white lotus bloomed layer by layer, and the blooming petals fell one by one. In the center of the lotus, an extremely strange white flower bud suddenly bloomed. Whoosh! A sharp white blade shot out at an extremely fast speed, and in the blink of an eye, it attacked Nietian. In the void, a sharp blade whistled through the air, and Nietian's entire body's defenses were activated layer by layer. Astral Shield, Sword 17, Sky Water Extreme Yuan Armor, Dragon Scale Shield, Chi of True Origin, and Sword of the Divine Wheel were all released at the same time. Bang! The demon bone white blade descended and directly hit the Sword of the Divine Wheel, producing a dull sound. The seemingly ordinary demon bone white blade contained an incomparably terrifying power. In the next moment, Sword of the Divine Wheel, broken. Chi of True Origin, broken. Dragon Scale Shield, broken. Heavenly Water Extreme Yuan Armor, broken. Sword 17, broken. Astral Shield, broken. 6 layers of defense instantly collapsed, and Nietian was directly hit, and his body shot out like a meteor. Everyone's nerves were tense, and they did not dare to breathe loudly. Their eyes followed the figure in the sky. Whoosh! Whoosh! At that moment, the figure in the sky suddenly moved, and a pair of sword shadows condensed into wings. Chapter 684. Nietian stood in the air and stared at Mo Zhaojing with a burning gaze. For the third palm strike, Mo Zhaojing used his giant spiritual body and the demon bone blade of the demon bone white lotus. 6 layers of Nietian's defense were shattered. However, he still had a 7th layer of defense, which was his 9-star dragon vein body. With the protection of dragon chi, even the demon bone blade couldn't injure him seriously. Nietian's vital chi was severely depleted, but he didn't care. He stared at Mo Zhaojing coldly, waiting for the latter to let him go. 3 palms. Nietian really took 3 palms from Mo Zhaojing. The crowd looked at the figure in the sky. No one expected that Nietian could take 3 palms from Mo Zhaojing. Countless pairs of eyes became infatuated as they looked at Nietian with shock, awe, reverence, and even worship. Tang Hao, Meng Fanchun, and the rest were stunned. Their mouths were wide open, and they couldn't say a word. Tang Hao thought that he could also take 3 palms from Mo Zhaojing, but he was at the peak of the spirit will level, while Nietian was only at the 3rd level of the spirit will level. Although he didn't know what happened to Nietian, Tang Hao was sure that his teacher was more terrifying than before. He's not dead. Mo Zhaojing was stunned for a few seconds. He only reacted when Nietian's voice rang in his ears. His face was full of shock as he screamed. He used all his strength in 1 palm strike, but it didn't kill Nietian. How is that possible? Mo Zhaojing, I've disappointed you that I'm not dead. Nietian sneered. He smiled cold. 3 palms have passed. Let him go. Mo Zhaojing's body shook violently. His pupils constricted as if he had just woken up from a dream. He kept muttering, "Impossible, impossible. This is impossible." After a long time, Mo Zhaojing finally calmed down. Suddenly, his eyes revealed a hint of ruthlessness. He looked at Nietian with trembling eyes and roared, "Let him go." In front of the entire world, Mo Zhaojing did not dare to go back on his words, but a strange light flashed in his eyes. 2 of the Mo family's martial practitioners walked forward, cautiously handing Nieyuro over to Nietian. Nietian carefully examined Nieyuro's body with his divine sense, and after confirming that the latter was fine, he relaxed quite a bit. Although Nietian and Mo, you were in a life and death duel. Mo, you had already become a cripple. He had no intention of entangling with him anymore, and the Meru martial meet should also be over. However, just as Nietian was about to leave, Mo Zhaojing suddenly laughed maniacally. "Nietian!" Mo Zhaojing roared and stared coldly at Nietian. "You took 3 palms from me for your sister. What price are you willing to pay for Mo Rushi?" Mo Rushi. Upon hearing this name, Nietian's body trembled, and his pupils shrank. At this moment, two more people appeared behind Mo Zhaojing. One of them was carrying a bed, and on the bed lay a red-haired girl. It was Mo Rushi. Mo Zhaojing had not only kidnapped Nyeyuro, but also Mo Rushi. The sudden scene caused the crowd to suck in a breath of cold air. Mo Zhaojing had kidnapped two of Nie Tian's closest relatives. The first one wanted Nie Tian to take 3 palms from him, and the second one wanted Nie Tian to take 3 more palms. Nie Tian's origin power was currently exhausted, and it was impossible for him to take 3 more palms from Mo Zhaojing. Mo Zhaojing. Nie Tian handed Nyeyuro over to Meng Fanchen. He was completely enraged, and the aura around his body rose sharply. His entire person was as sharp as an unsheathed sword, as if he wanted to split the heavens. Mo Zhaojing, do you know what you're doing? Tang Hao reacted and roared angrily. Nie Tian, Tang Hao, you're the ones who forced me to do this. Since Nie Tian crippled my son, I'll cripple him too. Mo Zhaojing smiled coldly and said, Nie Tian, if you want to save Mo Rushi, then cripple your own origin meridians. Cripple his own origin meridians. Mo Zhaojing's words were like thunder, shaking everyone's heart. He did not want Nie Tian to take 3 more palms, but to make Nie Tian cripple his own origin meridians. How vicious! In an instant, everyone's gaze was once again focused on Nie Tian, waiting for his reply. Will Nie Tian really cripple his own origin meridians for Mo Rushi? Everyone was doubtful. All right, I promise you. Nie Tian's voice rang out almost as soon as Mo Zhaojing finished speaking. For Mo Rushi, he was willing to cripple his own origin meridians. Everyone's gaze instantly froze, as if time had stopped at this moment. Countless pairs of eyes stared at Nie Tian, the shock in their hearts written all over their faces. Nie Tian was a super genius with a limitless future, but once he crippled his own origin meridians, it was equivalent to ending his life. Teacher. This time, Tang Hao could no longer control himself. He took a step forward and cried out mournfully. Teacher. When the crowd heard Tang Hao's voice, their pupils suddenly constricted. They could not believe their ears, nor could they believe their eyes. Nie Tian was Tang Hao's teacher? How is this possible? Everyone froze at this moment. Even Mo Zhaojing was stunned on the spot. Nie Tian did not care about the crowd's reaction. He took a step forward, his body trembled slightly, and a powerful force surged in his origin meridians. As long as he willed it, his 9 origin meridians would instantly crumble. Interesting. Just as Nie Tian was about to cripple his own origin meridians, an extremely sinister and evil voice suddenly rang out. Since this girl is so important to Elder Nie Tian, I will take her away first. As the faint voice fell, a cloud of black qi suddenly appeared in the air and filled the air. The 2 martial artists beside Mo Zhaojing did not understand what was going on, and they immediately fell to the ground. Mo Rushi was swept away by the cloud of black qi, and the sinister voice sounded again. Nie Tian, you killed my son, so your life can only be taken by me. If you want this girl to be safe, come find me in 3 days at the land of bloody massacre. As the sinister voice fell, the cloud of black qi instantly disappeared. Tang Hao, stop him! Nie Tian let out a roar, and all of his blood boiled. Amidst the endless blood-colored light, he thrust his sword forward, and 100-meter-long blood-colored sword shadow blossomed, pressing down on the void. Boom! The sound of the air being cut was heard. The sword did not hit anything. Everything happened in the blink of an eye, and most people could not react in time. The cloud of black qi was none other than the pavilion master of Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, Yu Guwei. No one would have thought that Yu Guwei had been hiding in the dojo all this time and had never left. Tang Hao finally reacted. His body trembled, and he soared into the sky. He activated the myriad tribulation's ghost eyes, but there was no one in the void. Yu Guwei's concealment technique was too brilliant. If he did not take the initiative, he would not have been able to detect his presence. Leave her here. At that moment, a delicate voice was heard, and a figure suddenly appeared. Immediately, a crimson pillar of fire shot out and bombarded the void. Chapter 685. A pillar of fire and a blade aura suddenly appeared in the air. Their auras were ferocious and unparalleled. Rui Qinyu, Elder Yi. Nietian looked at the two people in the air and called out their names. The two people who suddenly attacked were Rui Qinyu and Elder Yi. Rui Qinyu had the rainbow eyes. Even spirit ghosts could not hide from her eyes. But how did Old Man Yi discover the existence of nether ghosts? His blade intent has become stronger. Could it be? In the next moment, Nietian suddenly realized that Elder Ye's blade intent had become stronger. He immediately understood that Elder Ye's blade art had reached the realm of Blade Soul. Blade Soul was formed by the Blade Spirit. Not only did it increase the power of the blade wielder's blade intent, but it also greatly increased the wielder's perception. Old Man Yi was able to sense the existence of a nether ghost because he had a saber soul in his body. Huh? A surprised voice could be heard in the air. Spirit ghosts did not expect that they would be exposed. Tang Hao immediately discovered spirit ghosts. Without hesitation, he opened his myriad tribulation ghost eyes. Endless eye power surged out of his eyes and condensed into a blood-red ray of light that attacked spirit ghosts. The rainbow eyes contained the power to burn the heavens. The blade soul contained the power of the blade wielder, and the myriad tribulation ghost eyes contained the power of the myriad tribulation ghost eyes. The three powers merged together and were unstoppable. Even spirit ghosts did not dare to take such a powerful attack head-on. In the air, endless black chi spread out and turned into a strange rune. The rune spun in the air and instantly expanded thousands of times. It was like a giant net that covered the sky and suddenly fell down. Blood-severing seal. Nietian smelled a familiar aura from the rune net. It was the blood-severing seal. The power of the blood seal runes surged as a vast force pressed down on Lin Yun. Blood-severing seal is a gift I prepared for this summer martial meet. Enjoy it. Spirit Ghost's evil voice sounded. The black chi in the air gradually moved away and was about to disappear in the blink of an eye. Leave him here. Nietian's eyes were filled with venom. He stomped hard in the void, and his figure soared into the sky. He actually dashed up against the power of the blood seal. Teacher, Nietian, Mr. Nya, Tang Hao, Rui Qinyu, and Yi Linyan's voices rang out at the same time. Three figures followed closely behind Nietian. Heaven's shrouding totem, rise. Nietian's silhouette flickered like a bolt of lightning, and the moment he came into contact with the blood-severing seal, a tremendous amount of star force gushed out from his body. At the moment, he was already a fourth-tier divine wheel warrior and had awakened the power of 40 billion stars in his body. Dazzling starlight flickered in the sky, instantly forming a large net that covered the sky. Nietian controlled the heaven shrouding totem to cover his entire body as he charged towards the severing blood seal. Yu Gui, who was high up in the sky, felt the terrifying power of the heaven shrouding totem. His gaze suddenly tightened, and he was greatly shocked. He sneered and said, Nietian, no wonder you can kill Yumi Xian. So there is such a terrifying power hidden in your body. It seems that I have underestimated you. Nietian did not care. The heaven-shrouding totem transformed into a sharp blade that seemed capable of cutting through everything as he charged over. Yu Gui frowned slightly when he saw Nietian's unparalleled bravery. The corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. He waved his arm, and a black aura descended. He laughed sinisterly and said, Nietian, I will return Mo Rushi to you. However, she has been struck by my blood-severing seal. If I do not treat her within 3 days, she will definitely die. I will be waiting for you in the land of blood massacre. You must come. Remember to bring the map of the vein of vitality. Nietian saw a cloud of black aura floating in the sky. He extended his divine sense and found out that it was Mo Rushi. He stabbed out with his sword. A sword intent flew out and wrapped around the cloud of black aura. Mo Rushi's figure gradually appeared. Rushi. Nietion stretched out his hand to catch the figure in the sky. He saw that Mo Rushi's face was as pale as paper. There were faint traces of blood on her face. It was a sign that she had been struck by the blood-severing seal. Bastard! An angry roar resounded in the void. Nietion was on the verge of going crazy. Mo Rushi was already unconscious. Now that she had been struck by the blood-severing seal, how could she bear it? Right at this moment, 6 strange black shadows suddenly appeared in the sky. They gradually revealed themselves. They were 6 skinny old men that looked like dried corpses. 6 venerables. Make your move. Yugue bowed slightly to the 6 old men. He seemed to be very respectful. The 6 old men nodded. 6 blood seal runes appeared in their hands at the same time. Each of them was stronger than Yugue's runes. The 6 blood seal runes flew out at the same time. The power of the runes surged crazily and instantly expanded by tens of thousands of times. All the runes' power connected together and formed an overwhelming blood seal rune net that pressed down on the arena. Nietion, the game has just begun. Enjoy my gift. Yugue's evil voice sounded again. The 6 dried corpses turned into 6 clouds of black aura and hid in his body. The cold and evil laughter gradually disappeared. Yugue's figure also turned into a cloud of black aura and hid in the void. Oh no! Nietion saw the blood seal rune net appear in the sky. His heart sank. He immediately understood that Yugue had hidden in the Meru martial meat for this moment. He wanted everyone to be struck by the blood-severing seal. Nietion guessed that the bloody slaughter palace had been annihilated overnight because of this method. The blood seal rune net descended. The hundreds of thousands of people in the Meru martial arena were covered. There was no way to escape. Those who could watch the Meru martial meet were all people with some strength in the 3,000 lesser worlds. If all these people were killed by the blood-severing seal, then half of the 3,000 lesser worlds would be destroyed. The land of blood slaughter, the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. What were they trying to do? This was not the time to think about these things. Nietion's figure descended and handed Mo Rushi to Rui Qinyu. He then raised his head and looked at the blood seal rune net above his head. The heaven-shrouding totem, whether you can withstand it or not, depends on you. Nietion's eyes flashed with a sharp light. His expression instantly became determined. He took a step and his figure soared into the sky. The heaven-shrouding totem behind him completely unfolded and rushed toward the blood seal rune net. Nietion actually wanted to use the heaven-shrouding totem to resist the blood seal rune net. Teacher, Tang Hao roared in grief when he saw this scene. Mr. Nya, Elder Yi was extremely moved. With Nietion's strength, he could completely leave before the blood seal rune net descended. However, he chose to resist the blood seal rune net to save the people below. The crowd on the martial field looked at the figure in the sky with solemn expressions. All of them moved. Tang Hao, Elder Yi, don't worry about me. Take everyone and leave. Nietion roared. The power of the blood seal rune was stronger than he had expected. Although the heaven-shrouding totem was powerful, it could not display its full power. At most, it could only resist the blood seal rune for a few minutes. Brother Yi, take everyone and leave. I'll stay and help teacher. Tang Hao no longer had any scruples. He turned around and said to Yi Linyan. Chapter 686. Elder Yi raised his head and looked at Nietion with a solemn expression. He nodded firmly and left immediately. In the martial arts arena, the crowd quickly evacuated. Many spirit wheel stage experts directly bombarded the walls of the martial arts arena. Unfortunately, the walls were dozens of meters thick and were reinforced by spiritual formations. Even spirit wheel stage experts could not destroy them. Everyone, enter the martial arts arena and leave from the exit. Nietion looked down. There were very few entrances and exits to the viewing platform. If the crowd wanted to leave from there, it would take at least a few hours. On the other hand, there were many entrances and exits to the martial arts arena. Every arena had an entrance and exit. The crowd would first enter the martial arts arena and then leave from the martial arts arena. Everyone, hurry up. Lord Nietion is trying to buy time for us. Everyone, don't panic. Whoever dares to squeeze I will be the first to kill him. Lord Nyetian is not afraid of death. If we are in a mess, we are really not human. In the crowd, someone shouted and spontaneously formed a long line. One by one, the long line entered the martial arts gathering and left from the exit of the martial arts arena. Nyetian looked at the crowd in the martial arts arena. His eyes became somewhat blurred. In the battle with Mou, he received 3 palm strikes from Mo Zhaojing. His elemental energy was already exhausted. Just now, when he wanted to kill the Nether Ghost, he used the forbidden move of the AO sword arts. At this time, he forcefully activated the Heaven Shrouding Totem. He had already reached the limit of his physique and elemental energy. Teacher, Tang Hao noticed that Nie Tian's breath had become unstable. He took a step forward, and a stream of elemental energy flowed into the latter's body. With the support of Tang Hao's elemental energy, Nie Tian's complexion improved a lot. However, at this time, Nie Tian suddenly felt that the power of the Bloodstain Formation net had suddenly increased. He frowned and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. The Bloodstain Formation net suddenly sank. Nie Tian was about to be unable to bear it. Teacher, let's go. Tang Hao's heart was in pain. He wanted to leave with Nie Tian. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. Nie Tian smiled at Tang Hao calmly. When Tang Hao saw that expression, his eyes became moist. He had seen that expression countless times. Every time he worried about Nie Tian, the latter would always use that expression to comfort him. Tang Hao wanted to help Nie Tian, but he was powerless. The Heaven Shrouding Totem required the power of the stars, and he did not have this kind of power. Mr. Nya, let me help you. Just when Tang Hao was on the brink of despair, a feminine voice was heard. A petite figure appeared. Her silvery hair fluttered in the wind, and a third eye opened between her brows. Tawny. Nie Tian looked at the person who had come, and a hint of joy appeared on his solemn face. The person who had come was none other than Tawny. Tawny's scar of the dusk eye opened. Within her pupils, blood-colored pupil power permeated the air and surged into the Heaven Shrouding Totem like a raging wave. The Heaven Shrouding Totem, which had been gradually dimming, suddenly shone with starlight. Nie Tian and Tawny had worked together once in the chaotic abyss. Now that they were working together again, they had a tacit understanding of each other. The Bloodstain Formation net was hit by the Heaven Shrouding Totem and emitted a violent roar. Even the air was compressed and emitted sparks. Nie Tian. At this moment, Ruoyu's figure also appeared. He came to Nie Tian's side, and his eyes trembled. He did not expect that Nie Tian would forcefully block the Bloodstain Formation net. The moment the Bloodstain Formation net appeared, Ruoyu was more frightened than anyone else. Back then, the people from the Bloody Slaughter Palace had died under the Bloodstain Formation net. Although he was only 5 years old at that time, he would never forget that scene. If it were not for Nie Tian today, the hundreds of thousands of people from the Summer Martial Gathering would have suffered the same fate as the people from the Bloody Slaughter Palace. With the support of the Eye of the Scar of Dusk, the power of the Heaven Shrouding Totem had greatly increased, and the Bloodstain Formation net was temporarily controlled. The crowd below slowly dispersed, and gradually, the number of people became much smaller. Nie Tian let out a long breath, and his heart felt much more relaxed. Nie Tian, I'll kill you. However, at this moment, a ruthless voice suddenly sounded. Immediately, a demon bone blade appeared and shot out, attacking Nie Tian. Mo Zhaojing. Nie Tian's eyes focused, and he saw a sinister face. Who would have thought that at this moment? Mo Zhaojing still wanted to kill Nie Tian. He wanted to avenge Mou too much, and this kind of mentality almost drove him crazy. Mo Zhaojing, you have a death wish. At this critical moment, Tang Hao roared. The eye of the ghost eye flickered, and a blood-red blade appeared in the void. Bam! The demon bone blade and the blood-red blade collided. An explosion sounded in the void. Tang Hao's figure flickered, and his strange eyes flashed with a hint of killing intent. Coldly, he said, Mo Zhaojing, if you dare to take half a step forward, you'll die. Is that so? Mo Zhaojing's face was sinister, and his entire body was filled with killing intent. He roared, "Mo family martial artists, kill Nie Tian for me." At this moment, Nie Tian wanted to fight against the bloodstained formation net, and anyone could kill him. As long as Mo Zhaojing delayed Tang Hao, the Mo family martial artists would rush forward, and Nie Tian would die without a doubt. However, the four martial artists behind Mo Zhaojing looked at him dumbly and did not react at all. "Bastards, didn't you hear what I said?" Seeing that the four martial artists did not attack, Mo Zhaojing's body trembled, and he roared violently. "Master, are you crazy?" Finally, one of the martial artists from the Mo family took a step forward and roared angrily, "Master Nie Tian is saving us, but you want to kill him. Master, you can't keep making mistakes." The other three also looked at Mo Zhaojing, and their eyes were mixed with anger. Even an idiot could see what Nie Tian was doing, and Mo Zhaojing actually wanted to kill him at this time. Did he still have any conscience in his heart? "Mo Feng, kill Nie Tian for me." Mo Zhaojing only had hatred for Nie Tian and did not listen to anyone else. He roared angrily, turned around, and saw that Mo Feng had long disappeared. "Bastards, you're all trash." Mo Zhaojing cursed, and the killing intent in his eyes did not diminish. He glared fiercely at Nie Tian, but he was afraid of Tang Hao and did not dare to attack. Nie Tianling looked at Mo Zhaojing coldly. The latter was the master of the family, but his actions were so shameless. If the Mo family was in his hands, it would be destroyed sooner or later. "Brother Mo, let's work together and kill Nie Tian." At this moment, another voice sounded. "Zhang Tingyin." Nie Tian's eyes focused, and he looked toward the direction of the voice. The person who came was none other than the Danwu Hall master, Zhang Tingyin. Zhang Tingyi's eyes were like poison, and he was carrying a corpse in his hand. It was Mo Feng. He smiled coldly and pointed at Mo Feng. "Brother Mo, your Mo family's dog is disobedient. I'll kill it for you. You won't mind, right?" Mo Zhaojing was slightly stunned, and then he smiled coldly. "Hall Master Zhang, as long as you're willing to help me kill Nie Tian, everything is negotiable." "Zhang Tingyin, you." Tang Hao looked at Zhang Tingyin, who suddenly appeared, and was shocked speechless. "Danwu Hall Master?" Suddenly, Nie Tianling smiled coldly and stared at Zhang Tingyin. He said coldly, "Zhang Tingyin, Yumi Xian, one of the Yu and Ming elders. Who is he to you?" Chapter 687. When the Dan Martial Hall's Zhang Tingyin heard Nie Tian mention Yumi Xian's name, his body abruptly trembled, and his expression instantly stiffened. Immediately after, his gaze became gloomy and cold as he said in a cold voice, "Nie Tian, it really was you who killed Yumi Xian." "Zhang Tingyin, you're indeed from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion," Nie Tianling said indifferently. "If I'm not wrong, you're the other of the Yu and Ming elders, right?" When Zhang Tingyin appeared, Nie Tian noticed that the former also had the aura of netherworld ghost chi. It was very similar to Yumi Xian's, but it was much stronger. "Nie Tian, you're very smart. You've exceeded my expectations." Zhang Tingyin didn't conceal it anymore. The muscles on his face changed eerily and turned into a bony skeleton face. His aura also changed and became eerie and cold. Tang Hao's expression stiffened. He was quite surprised. How could he have imagined that the Danwu Hall master was actually from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion? Nie Tianling smiled coldly and said, "He's not the real Zhang Tingyin. He just replaced Zhang Tingyi's identity. I'm afraid the real Zhang Tingyin is already dead." "That's right." The skeletal elder smiled sinisterly. "My name is Yumi Huang. The Real Dan Wu Hall master has already died in the hands of Lord Ghost King." Tang Hao and Mo Zhaojing were stunned at the same time. They didn't expect that Zhang Tingyin was actually dead. The Dan Wu Hall master was actually from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. If this news got out, the Alchemist Guild would lose all its face. "Yumi Huang, Yu Gui has left, but you still dare to stay. Is it to take revenge for Yumi Xian?" Nie Tian's expression was cold without any fear. It was frightening. Yumi Xian and Yumi Huang were called the Yu and Ming elders, and their names were so similar. They were obviously brothers. Yumi Huang must have appeared to take revenge for Yumi Xian. "Nie Tian, since you know, all the more I can't let you live." Yumi Huang smiled coldly and turned to Mo Zhaojing. "Mo family head, how about we work together to kill Nie Tian?" And Mo Zhaojing was stunned at first. Then his eyes flashed with passion. The corners of his mouth curled up as he nodded and said, "You stop Tang Hao. I'll kill Nie Tian." Yumi Huang was more powerful than Yumi Xian. He was also in the 9th tier of the Divine Wheel. He was not much weaker than Tang Hao and Mo Zhaojing. It was impossible for him to defeat Tang Hao, but he could still stop him for a while. Tang Hao's expression darkened. He took a step forward and stood in front of Nie Tian. "As long as I'm here, I won't allow anyone to hurt Teacher." "Teacher?" Mo Zhaojing smirked coldly. "Tang Hao, I think you're possessed. How can a kid be your teacher? Don't waste your breath on them. Attack!" Yumi Huang roared, and his chi aura surged. Boundless black chi spread out, and the air was filled with the stench of blood. "Tang Hao, be careful. This is ghost chi from the netherworld. It can make people hallucinate." Nie Tian growled and reminded Tang Hao. Tang Hao frowned slightly. He saw the black chi raging in the air like black snakes dancing in the air. It was chilling. Yumi Huang's ghost chi was stronger than Yumi Xian's. The ghost chi in the air became thicker and thicker. Boundless ghost chi condensed into 5 ferocious ghost faces, and the bloody killing intent was about to burst out. The wailing of thousands of ghosts could be heard in the air. It was eerie and unsettling. Tang Hao's pupils suddenly constricted. He opened his myriad tribulation ghost eyes and looked coldly at the 5 ghost faces in the air. He smiled coldly and muttered 3 words, "Myriad tribulation kill." As soon as he said the word, a blood-red blade whistled through the air. It ignored all obstacles and attacked Yumi Huang. Whoosh! The blood-red blade flew past and drew a bloody arc in the air. The ghost chi in the air instantly disappeared. Yumi Huang stood on the spot. His eyes suddenly widened, and he slowly raised his hands. A red line suddenly exploded on his neck, and blood immediately gushed out. Before he could react, Yumi Huang's body fell to the ground, and he died on the spot. One move, just one move, had killed Yumi Huang, who was in the 9th tier of the Divine Wheel. That was the terror of the myriad tribulation ghost eyes. Mo Zhaojing watched Yumi Huang's figure fall. He was stunned and did not react for a long time. Nie Tian's expression also stiffened slightly. Then he laughed bitterly. He had underestimated the myriad tribulation ghost eyes. His warning just now was a little laughable. If Tang Hao had not activated the myriad tribulation ghost eyes, Yumi Huang might have been able to stop him for a while. However, in the face of the myriad tribulation ghost eyes, Yumi Huang could not even withstand one move. After killing Yumi Huang, Tang Hao turned to Mo Zhaojing. His ghostly eyes were locked onto the latter, and they were filled with a cold, killing intent. "Brother Tang, you're not going to kill me, are you?" Mo Zhaojing said abruptly with a dull expression. At this moment, facing Tang Hao's myriad tribulation ghost eyes, Mo Zhaojing was afraid. That pair of eyes actually made him unable to muster up any will to resist. Tang Hao's gaze slightly focused, and he began to hesitate in his heart. When Ye Tian saw this scene, he shook his head slightly. Tang Hao had been soft-hearted since he was young. He did not expect that, even after more than 100 years, he still could not change this bad habit. Being merciful to one's enemy was being cruel to oneself. With Mo Zhaojing's character, even if Tang Hao let him go now, not only would he not be grateful to Tang Hao, but he would also hate him even more. For people like Mo Zhaojing, the best way to deal with them was one word: kill. Tang Hao, kill him. When he thought of this, Nie Tian's gaze became ice cold, and he spoke indifferently. Tang Hao's body suddenly trembled, and then he nodded solemnly. "It's not that easy to kill me." Suddenly, Mo Zhaojing let out a strange cry and completely put away his pitiful disguise. The demon bone white lotus bloomed behind him, and all the origin power in his body surged out. A demon bone blade shot out, and a terrifying aura suddenly erupted. "Watch out!" Nietian cried out in alarm. Mo Zhaojing was too cunning. He first pretended to be pitiful, and when Tang Hao let his guard down, he actually suddenly attacked. Tang Hao's gaze focused, and endless pupil power surged out from his eyes. Thousands of ghost blades appeared in the air, and like a sky full of arrows, they surged out like a raging wave. Boom! In the air, a loud sound was heard, and the demon bone blade was completely submerged by the thousands of ghost blades. Mo Zhaojing felt the murderous aura coming towards him. His eyes could not help but tremble, and an unconcealable despair appeared in his eyes. Tang Hao's thousand tribulations ghost eyes was too strong, and he could not resist at all. Mo Zhaojing's mouth opened wide, and he wanted to say something, but he only managed to say one word, and then he did not have the chance to say the rest of the words. Boom! Thousands of ghost blades were like giant galloping beasts whistling past. Mo Zhaojing's body was completely submerged, and not even his bones were left. Mo Zhaojing, the master of the Mo family, one of the strongest cultivators in the 3,000 small worlds, was dead. Nietian and the others were stunned, and they could not react for a long time. Chapter 688. The Mahes clan cultivators looked at Tang Hao from afar, their eyes filled with fear. Originally, everyone thought that Tang Hao and Mo Zhaojing should be evenly matched. Who could have expected that Tang Hao would kill Mo Zhaojing in one move? Tang Hao is indeed the strongest person in the 3,000 small realms. However, Nietian knew that if Tang Hao had not activated the myriad tribulation ghost eye, it would have been very difficult for him to kill Mo Zhaojing. Tang Hao had killed Yumi Huang and Mo Zhaojing in an instant. However, he had activated the myriad tribulation ghost eye consecutively and even used its innate magic power. This made his eyes hurt, and blood leaked out of the corners of his eyes. Nietian looked below. Most of the people in the dueling grounds had already left. He looked at Tawny and said, "You guys go first." Tawny nodded slightly. Her Eye of Sunset Scar had already reached its limit. It would be very difficult for her to continue. "Wait for me at the Gu residence," Nietian said to Zensrain. Zensrain nodded slightly and left with Tawny. The Mahes clan cultivators glanced at Nietian and left as well. "Let's go." After everyone had left, Nietian raised his head and took a look at the blood seal talisman net above his head. Shortly after, his figure moved, and the totem that covered the sky disappeared. The proud sword Heavenly Wings appeared on his back. With a flap of the wings, his figure left at an extremely fast speed. Tang Hao followed closely behind Nietian, and the two of them left the dueling grounds in the blink of an eye. After flying out of the dueling grounds, Nietian stood high in the sky. He saw the blood talisman net pressing down like a mountain collapsing. Rumble! In the next instant, the blood talisman net fell, and the entire dueling grounds collapsed. The ground shook, and rocks flew everywhere. Waves of earth rose nearly 100 meters high. All the buildings within several kilometers collapsed. It was like the end of the world. Nietian and Tang Hao stood high in the sky, quietly watching everything on the ground. If Nietian had not used the heaven-shrouding totem to block the bloodstained talisman net, almost everyone in the arena would have died tragically. After a long, long time, the dust finally settled. The entire martial arena had turned into a giant pit, and there was still the power of the blood runes surging in the air. It seemed that it would take a very long time for them to dissipate. "Teacher, what are these runes? How can it be so terrifying?" Tang Hao was stunned for a long time before he finally came to his senses and asked in horror. "This is the blood-severing seal. More than 20 years ago, the Blood Slaughter Palace was destroyed by this seal." Nietian frowned. He never thought that the power of the blood-severing seal would be so terrifying. The arena, with a radius of several thousand meters, turned into ruins in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Nietian recalled the 6 mummified old men who had laid down the severing blood seal. None of them were any weaker than the Nether Ghost. Moreover, Nether Ghost was very respectful towards them, seemingly addressing them as venerable. Nyetion guessed that those 6 old men should be people from the land of bloody slaughter. After laying down the blood-severing seal, the 6 old men hid inside the Nether Ghost's body. It seemed that they had used some kind of secret technique to leave the land of bloody slaughter. The land of bloody slaughter had painstakingly laid down the blood-severing seal. It seemed that they wanted to deal a heavy blow to the 3,000 lesser worlds, but they didn't expect that it would be destroyed by Nyetion. Tang Hao. Nyetion spread out his divine sense, and sensed that the power of the blood-severing seal on the ground was still very strong. He couldn't help but frown. "Teacher," Tang Hao respectfully said, "make the area within a radius of 10 kilometers of the martial arena a forbidden area. No one is allowed to enter." Nyetion's eyes narrowed. He took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Yes." Tang Hao nodded and looked at Nyetion. There were thousands of questions in his heart, but he didn't know how to ask. Nyetion naturally knew what Tang Hao was thinking. He faintly smiled and said, "I'll tell you about my matters later. In the future, don't call me teacher or Lord Nyetion. Just call me Nyetion." "How can I do that?" Tang Hao reacted very strongly, appearing very excited. Nyetion's lips curled up helplessly. Then, he said, "I'll call you Mr. Nye then." Tang Hao knew that Nyetion did not want to expose his identity. After thinking for a while, he nodded. Countless people on the ground stared in the direction of the Meru martial arena, flabbergasted. Unconcealable fear appeared in their eyes. "Tang Hao, I have to return to the Gu residence first. I'll leave the rest to you. After you're done, come to the Gu residence to look for me." Nyetion was worried about Mo Rushi's and Nyeyuro's safety. He did not want to stay any longer, so he turned around and prepared to leave. Just at this moment, 2 figures suddenly appeared. They were the other 2 clan heads, Gu Xuanmiao and Xiao Shinfeng. Elder Nyetion. Gu Xuanmiao and Xiao Shinfeng arrived at Nyetion's side. Their gazes toward Nyetion had an additional hint of reverence. Then they bowed deeply to Nyetion. At this moment, although the 2 did not know Nyetion's true identity, Tang Hao was very respectful to Nyetion. This was enough to show how high Nyetion's status was. Furthermore, Nyetion had just saved everyone. Just this point alone made him worthy of their respect. Nyetion had a calm expression as he said directly, "Clan heads, there is no need to be so polite. I'm tired. Goodbye." Nyetion's reaction to the 4 noble clan's clan heads was extremely calm, so calm that it was strange. Gu Xuanmiao and Xiao Shanfeng exchanged glances. They had not expected Nyetion to have such a reaction. Nyetion's attitude had always been like this. His attitude was the same in front of everyone. One should not always be low-key, nor should they always be ostentatious. One should always be neither servile nor overbearing. When Nyetion first met the 4 clan heads, he did not look up to them. Now, Nyetion would not look down on them either. "Brother Gu, Brother Qiu, Mr. Nye does indeed need to rest. Leave the rest to us." Tang Hao took a step forward and said indifferently. Gu Xuanmiao and Xiao Shenfeng were slightly startled. Of course, they noticed that Tang Hao's way of addressing Nyetion had changed. They knew that Nyetion was hiding his identity, so they did not point it out. Nyetion was about to leave when he suddenly thought of something. He turned around and looked at Xiao Shenfeng. "Elder Nyetion, about the past." Xiao Shenfeng's scalp went numb from Nyetion's stare. When he thought of the few conflicts between the Qiu clan and Nyetion, his heart sank and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. If someone were to see this scene, who knew what they would think if they saw Nyetion, one of the 4 great clansmen, being drenched in cold sweat with a single glance? "The conflicts between the Qiu clan and me are written off." Nyetion's expression was indifferent as he said indifferently, "Thank you, Elder Nyetion." Xiao Shenfeng's heart was finally at ease. He bowed slightly to Nyetion. "Qiu clan." Nyetion's gaze trembled slightly. He asked, "Is Qiu Xiaofeng from the Qiu clan?" Xiao Shenfeng was slightly startled. His expression, which had just relaxed a little, suddenly became tense. He gulped and replied, He is a direct descendant of the Chiu clan. He is from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. Before Chiu Shanfeng could finish, Nie Tian directly interrupted him. With these words, Nie Tian took a step forward in the air and disappeared in a flash. Xiaofeng, Chiu Shanfeng froze on the spot. After a long while, he sighed. The clan is unfortunate. Nie Tian did not explain anything. He only said one sentence indifferently. But Chiu Shanfeng completely believed him. This was the dignity of a powerful expert. Tang Hao, remember to bring me the Yuan Qi vein map. At that moment, Nie Tian's voice suddenly sounded, and then his aura completely disappeared. Chapter 689. Su Mi Spiritual Capital, Gu Residence. Meng Fanshun, Gu Yi, and the others were waiting anxiously outside the room. After a while, Nie Tian walked out of Mo Rushi's room with a pale face and a grave expression. Elder Nie Tian, how is Miss Mo? Meng Fanshun asked anxiously when he saw Nie Tian walk out. I've temporarily suppressed the blood seal's power. However, it won't be easy to remove it completely. Nie Tian sighed and said, I plan to go to the land of bloody massacre tomorrow. He had already seen that Mo Rushi's life was in danger due to the splitting blood seal. Mo Rushi was already unconscious, and it was unknown whether she was alive or not. Now that she was struck by the splitting blood seal, her life was in danger. The worst thing was that the splitting blood seal seemed to have affected Mo Rushi's phoenix soul. There was a violent force in her body that seemed to want to tear her apart. Before Yue left, he said that if Mo Rushi wasn't treated within 3 days, she would die without a doubt. Nie Tian did not believe Netherghost's words. He had just used the dragon energy in his body to help Mo Rushi temporarily suppress the blood seal. However, if he wanted to wake Mo Rushi up, he still had to go to the land of blood massacre. The power of the blood seal in Mo Rushi's body wasn't strong yet, and Nie Tian could suppress it with his dragon chi. However, as time passed, the power of the blood seal would grow stronger, and even his dragon chi wouldn't be able to suppress it. The splitting blood seal was very strange, and it was different from the seals that Nie Tian had encountered before. He could only suppress it now and couldn't remove it. If he forcefully removed it, Mo Rushi would be in danger. Therefore, he had to find Yue and find a way to remove the blood seal. We're going to the land of bloody massacre tomorrow. Meng Fanshun and the others were stunned and said worriedly, You haven't recovered from your injuries, and you've exhausted too much essence power. I'm afraid it's not appropriate to go to the land of bloody massacre now. I know what I'm doing. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, Is Tang Hao here? Meng Fanshun nodded and said, The 3 masters are all here and are waiting in the main hall. Nie Tian defeated MOU and became the champion of the Shumi martial meet. Originally, the 4 patriarchs should have come together to give him the Yuan Qi geographical map. Unfortunately, Mo Zhaojing was already dead. From now on, the Mo clan would decline and fall from the ranks of the 4 great clans. At this time, Rain, True Su, and Tawny also appeared. It seems like the 10,000-year Eye Soul has helped you temporarily suppress the power of the blood seal. Nie Tian smiled faintly when he saw True Case Rain's calm aura and sharp eyes. He had asked Yang Zixiao to use the 10,000-year Eye Soul to suppress the power of the blood seal in Raindrop's body, and from the looks of it, the effect was not bad. However, while the 10,000-year Eye Soul was suppressing the blood seal, it was also suppressing True Case's strength. It was only ensuring that he wouldn't be devoured by the blood seal. If he wanted to completely solve the problem of the blood seal, he had to find the person who cast the seal. After a while, everyone arrived at the great hall of the Gu residence. Mr. Nya, this is the Essence geographical map. Tang Hao took a step forward and respectfully presented a simple and unadorned scroll with both hands to Nie Tian. When the others saw Tang Hao being so respectful, they were all flabbergasted. Although some people had heard Tang Hao call Nie Tian teacher in the Shumi martial arena, most of them thought that it was a momentary slip of the tongue. At this moment, Tang Hao's attitude toward Nie Tian was very respectful. This made people speculate that Nie Tian's true identity must be very horrifying. Nietion did not care about the reactions of the others. He received the Essence geographical map and unfurled it. A simple and unadorned scroll appeared before everyone. When the Essence geographical map was fully unfurled, it was several meters in radius. It did not show rivers or mountains, but the distribution of essence in the sky. Nietion's eyes shone like torches as he sent his divine sense into the map to sense the distribution of the vital energy. Vaguely, he seemed to see a dragon-shaped vital energy. All of the vital energy was converging towards the dragon's head, where the vital energy was incomparably dense. The others also looked at the Essence geographical map curiously. However, no one could understand it. This Essence geographical map was created in the ancient era. Even Nietion only had a rough understanding of it. How could the others understand it? No wonder the four noble clans could not find the location of the Essence geographical map, even after obtaining it for 10-odd years. It was because they could not understand it. Give me a map of the 3,000 small realms. As Nietion sensed the direction of the Essence geographical map, his frown deepened. Occasionally, a fervent look flashed in his eyes. Gu immediately brought over the map of the 3,000 small realms and unfurled it before Nietion. Nietion carefully compared the map of the 3,000 small worlds with the map of the spiritual energy veins, over and over again, without getting tired of it. Everyone's eyes were no longer on the geographical map. Instead, they were focused on Nietion. They did not even dare to breathe heavily. They were afraid to make any noise and disturb him. Gradually, beads of sweat appeared on Nietion's forehead. His face also slowly turned pale. Phew! After a long time, he let out a long breath. His lips curled into a confident smile. He pointed to a place on the map and asked, "What is this place?" Everyone went forward to take a look. They were all surprised and said a name, Hung Duan Tian. Hung Duan Tian was the #1 mountain range in the 3,000 small realms. Nietion had been there before. It was right next to Discord City. The Essence geographical map is in Hung Duan Tian. Nietion nodded slightly and said in a deep voice. He had already sensed that the Essence geographical map corresponded to the map of the 3,000 small realms. And the place where the dragon-shaped geographical map converged was in Hung Duan Tian. Hung Duan Tian. Fu and his wife went to Hung Duan Tian. They have not returned yet, Gu Yi said abruptly. Fu went to Hung Duan Tian. Nietion's eyes narrowed. No wonder he did not see Tong Fu when he returned to the Summer of Spirit. He thought the latter was in Danwu City. He did not expect him to go to Hung Duan Tian. The Fu's wife that Gu Yi mentioned must be the cave spirit Adele. But why did Tong Fu and Adele go to Hung Duan Tian? Was that Adele's home? Nietion did not ask much. If this trip to the land of blood massacre went smoothly, he would go to Hung Duan Tian. At that time, he might meet Tong Fu. Nietion put away the Essence geographical map. His expression became even more serious. Before Yigue left, he said that he must bring the Essence geographical map with him. This undoubtedly meant that the Essence geographical map was very important to the land of blood massacre. What did the land of blood massacre need the Essence geographical map for? Following that, Nietion asked about the Sumeru Martial Arena. After confirming that everything was normal, he breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he let the others leave, leaving only Tang Hao and Elder Yi. Ever since Ling Xiantian Pavilion and the Land of Blood Massacre appeared, they had always been following behind Nietion. This time, Nietion was going to take the initiative. Chapter 690. The moon was like a silver plate, and the sky was filled with stars. Standing alone in the small courtyard, Nietion looked up into the sky, feeling as if he were the most isolated person in the world. At this moment, his complexion had returned to normal, and his whole person was like a sharp sword that had been unsheathed. The Primal Chaos original coffin and a 9-star dragon vein physique could allow Nietion to recover in a very short time. The Primal Chaos original coffin gave him 10 times more time than others, and a 9-star dragon vein physique gave him the ability to recover quickly. Tomorrow, he would go to the land of blood massacre with Tang Hao and the others, and he had to return within a month. The power of the blood seal in Mo Rushi's body would explode after a month, and if Nyetian did not return, it would be terrible. Nyetian first asked Elder Yi to escort Mo Rushi, Nyeyuro, and the others back to Heaven Luo City, and then meet up with them at the Land of Blood Massacre. Sumi Ling City was not a safe place, and only by settling Mo Rushi and the others in Heaven Luo City could Nyetian be at ease. Heaven Luo City was much safer than Sumi Ling City with Dishi's protection. Nyetian stood in the small courtyard, waiting for someone. After a moment, several figures appeared, and they were all people that Nyetian was most familiar with: Tang Hao, Zhang Yifeng, Duanmu Lu, and Yang Zixiao. Zhang Yifeng and the others came to the courtyard, and when they saw Tang Hao, they subconsciously distanced themselves from him and looked at him strangely. In their hearts, Tang Hao was an unreachable existence that they could only look up to and not stand side by side with. Tang Hao looked at Zhang Yifeng and the others, and his face revealed a kind smile. He had long heard that Nyetian had accepted a few new disciples, and it seemed that they were the ones. Teacher, Zhang Yifeng, Duanmu Lu, and Yang Zixiao walked over and bowed respectfully to Nyetian. The three of them had already met each other, and they were about the same age, so they did not feel too restrained. Teacher, at this moment, Tang Hao also stepped forward and greeted respectfully. Teacher, Zhang Yifeng and the other two were stunned. Their expressions froze as they looked at Tang Hao incredulously. The corners of Nyetian's mouth rose, and he faintly said, "Don't be so surprised. I once told you that apart from you, I have 9 personal disciples, and Tang Hao is one of them. He's your 9th senior brother." 9th senior brother? Zhang Yifeng and the other two were dumbstruck, unable to react for a long time. Tang Hao was the number 1 person in the 3,000 lesser realms. Such a person was actually Nyetian's 9th disciple? This joke had gone too far. If this was true, then how terrifying would the other 8 disciples of Nyetian be? And what kind of identity did Nyetian have? Countless question marks appeared in the minds of the few of them, and they felt like they were in a daze. Junior brothers, I am indeed your senior brother. Tang Hao smiled faintly, appearing very amiable. Zhang Yifeng and the other two were stunned for a long time before they reacted, but their expressions were still dull. Nyetian smiled faintly and said, "I know it must be difficult for you to accept, but I can't explain too much now. When the time is right, you will naturally know who I am." Finished speaking, Nyetian waved his hand slightly, motioning for Zhang Yifeng and the others to leave first. He had asked Zhang Yifeng and the other two to come here just to see Tang Hao, nothing more. Zhang Yifeng had won the first place in the alchemist competition. For the next period of time, he would have to cultivate in the Alchemist Guild. Furthermore, he would be using the Dan Hart's Soul Stone to cultivate. In this way, his spiritual force would definitely skyrocket. Duanmu Lu went out on his own for life experience, and with Gu Weiyou by his side, Nyetian was very relieved. Yang Zixiao's strength was too weak, and she was too young, so she temporarily stayed in Sumi's spirit capital. Teacher, what happened back then? After Zhang Yifeng and the other two left, Tang Hao finally had a chance to be alone with Nyetian and couldn't wait to ask. When Nyetian was killed, it set off a great uproar throughout the Heaven Realm's realm of gods. Later, Daybreak Great Emperor said that Nyetian intended to rebel and was killed. Of course, Tang Hao didn't believe this statement. He knew that Nyetian didn't care about worldly power at all, so how could he possibly rebel? Let's not talk about my affairs for now. Nyetian shook his head slightly and smiled. Let's talk about you. How did you end up in the 3,000 small worlds? Tang Hao nodded and roughly recounted his experience. It turned out that after Nyetian fell, his 9 direct disciples were hunted down, and Tang Hao was sent to the 3,000 small worlds by his eldest senior brother Han Fei to avoid the Heaven Realm's pursuit. So, you don't know how the others are now. Nyetian's eyes narrowed, and his face became gloomy. 9 direct disciples have been implicated by him. How could he not be distressed? Yes. Tang Hao nodded. Seeing Nyetian's serious expression, he comforted him. Don't worry, teacher. The 8 senior brothers are powerful. They will definitely be fine. I hope so. Tion sighed softly. It was useless for him to worry at this time. Following that, the teacher and disciple talked for a long time before Tang Hao left. Tion returned to his room, sat cross-legged, and entered a state of cultivation. At this time, Tion's strength was already at the 4th tier of the divine wheel, and the power of 40 billion stars had awakened in the raw star stone. In the realm of stars, the realm zone formation was operating loudly, and the raw star stone was like a giant pillar that supported the sky, connecting the 9 layers of the galaxy. The power of 40 billion stars is still not enough for the heaven-shrouding totem to unleash its true power. Tion frowned slightly and murmured, "If my strength reaches the 9th tier of the divine wheel, I will be able to awaken the power of 90 billion stars in my body. At that time, the power of the heaven-shrouding totem will be revealed." There was a total of 900 billion stars in the raw star stone. If the power of 90 billion stars was awakened, it could almost light up the 1st layer of the galaxy, and the true power of the heaven-shrouding totem would be revealed. The power of the heaven-shrouding totem had already been witnessed by Tion. It was actually able to resist the blood seal talisman net jointly launched by the 6 venerables of the land of bloody massacre. It was really terrifying. The heaven-shrouding totem was only a totem of the 1st layer of the galaxy. When Tion's strength broke through to the heavenly evolution realm, he would be able to activate the power of the stars of the 2nd layer of the galaxy. He did not know what the 2nd totem would be. The totem of the 1st layer of the galaxy was already so abnormal. The totem of the 2nd layer of the galaxy was simply unimaginable. Tion could feel that the strength of the totem was closely related to the amount of power of the stars in his body awakened. Even if he could completely awaken the power of 100 billion stars of the 1st layer of the galaxy, he would not be able to unleash the full power of the heaven-shrouding totem. The 9 layers of the galaxy were originally one. If he wanted the heaven-shrouding totem to unleash its full power, he would have to awaken the power of all 900 billion stars. The power of 900 billion stars was still very far away for the current Tion. As the realm zone formation was operating, waves of power of the stars spread out. Tion felt a strange power surging in his body, giving him an indescribable feeling of comfort. Chapter 691. The land of blood massacre was the most dangerous place in the 3,000 lesser realms. This place was shrouded in a thick bloody mist all year round. The stench of blood filled the air, and the killing intent was overwhelming. Ordinary cultivators did not dare to enter. Those who could survive in the land of blood massacre were all powerful characters. At this moment, several figures appeared in the forest surrounding the land of blood massacre. These people were Tion and the others. In 3 days, Tion and Tang Hao arrived at the land of blood massacre. Elder Yi, who had escorted Mo Rushi and the others back to Heaven Luo City, also hurried over to meet up with Tion. Other than Tion, Tang Hao, and Elder Yi, there were 2 other figures, Raindrop and Tawny. Tion glanced at Tawny. He did not forget his promise to help her retrieve the Red Lotus Beast Essence. "Let's go in." Raindrop gazed at the land of blood massacre. Her gaze trembled, and she was the first to step in. Tion and the others followed. Stepping into the land of blood massacre once again, Tion felt very different. His spiritual power had reached the 64th level, and his perception far surpassed that of ordinary people. Previously, he could only feel the suffocating stench of blood in the air. But now, he could feel that the air was filled with some kind of restrictive power. Tion guessed that it was this kind of restrictive power that prevented people from leaving the land of blood massacre. It was the same as Cher's inability to leave the Destiny Forest. If the restrictive power was not broken, the restrictive power in her body would act up. The land of blood massacre is the same as other places, just more cruel. Those without strength cannot survive here. Raindrop said indifferently as she walked. Tion and the others' goal was very clear. They were going to the blood altar in the land of blood massacre. Tion heard from Raindrop that the blood altar was in the deepest part of the land of blood massacre. Not only were there all kinds of powerful spiritual beasts, but there were also a few extremely powerful blood massacre venerables guarding it. Normally, it would be difficult to even approach the blood-colored altar. One could well imagine how difficult it would be for Nyetian to take the altar away. The blood-colored altar had the power of rebirth, and it was very likely that it was the legendary eighth mystical flame, the Nirvana Sacred Heart. This was the key to awakening Mo Rushi, and no matter what, Nyetian had to obtain it. As he got closer and closer to the heart of the land of bloody massacre, Nyetian could feel the stench of blood in the air thickening, making it hard for him to breathe. Who is it? Right at this moment, an explosive shout sounded out, and then a few dozen figures suddenly descended and surrounded Nyetian and the others. These people were all wearing ghost masks. They were the guards of the land of bloody massacre. Nyetian narrowed his eyes slightly. The aura of the person in front of him was very familiar. He immediately remembered this person, Monarch. The last time Nyetian had left the land of bloody slaughter, he had been chased by the bloody slaughter guards. The person who had chased him was Monarch. "It's you." Monarch also recognized Nyetian. His sinister eyes trembled slightly, and then he immediately noticed Ruo Jinsa. He was stunned for a moment, and then he sneered, "Ruo Jinsa, you have indeed betrayed us. Great Jinsa has wasted his efforts in nurturing you." Ruo Jinsa's eyes trembled, but he did not speak. The great Jinsa that Monarch mentioned was his teacher. "You talk too much," Nyetian sneered. He took a step forward, released his restrained aura in an instant, and a sword whistled out. Swoosh! The sword was cold and sharp. A bright sword gleam swept past, and Monarch's head fell to the ground. When the other bloody slaughter guards saw this, they were all stunned and looked at Nyetian in disbelief. Monarch was an ancient martial art practitioner at the third tier of the spirit wheel, and she was killed just like that. The strength of this young man in front of them was so terrifying. The next moment, a word appeared in everyone's mind. Run! However, it was already too late. Elder Yi took a step forward, and his whole body's sword gushed out. The fierce and overbearing sword was like a solid substance. More than a dozen bloody slaughter guards did not even have time to scream before they died on the spot. Not far away, someone saw this scene and sucked in a breath of cold air. Someone actually killed the bloody slaughter guards in the land of bloody massacre. Was this not courting death? "Let's go," Nyetian said indifferently. They had already been discovered, and they had to rush to the blood-colored altar as soon as possible. "Stop!" At this moment, a cold voice sounded, and a figure descended from the sky. It was a young, ancient martial art practitioner who looked to be in his early 20s. When Nyetian saw the person, he frowned, and his heart suddenly sank. The strength of this young, ancient martial art practitioner in front of him was actually at the 8th tier of the spirit wheel. In the 3,000 small worlds, there was almost no one who could reach the 8th tier of the spirit wheel at this age. Even Mo, you had only reached the 9th tier of the spirit wheel with the help of external forces. More importantly, Nyetian noticed that this person's body was surging with a layer of faint air current, and the smell of blood in the air could not get close to him. 7th grade spiritual stratagem robe. Who is this person? Nyetian was quite surprised. He could see that this person was actually wearing a 7th grade spiritual stratagem robe. It was this robe that prevented the smell of blood from touching him. In the 3,000 small worlds, there is absolutely no one who could create a 7th grade spiritual stratagem robe. So there was only one possibility. This person was not from the 3,000 small worlds. "White-haired fellow, what is your name?" The person raised his eyebrows and locked his gaze on Nyetian with an arrogant expression. "What's the matter?" Nyetian replied indifferently. The person sized up Nyetian, and a look of surprise flashed in his eyes. Then, he smiled playfully and said, "I am just very curious. How can a person from the lower worlds like you condense such a terrifying sword will? Also, your strength is not bad. You are actually at the 4th tier of the spirit wheel. Your name is now qualified for me to know. Nietion shook his head slightly and did not deny it. This person said that Nietion was from the lower worlds right off the bat. This undoubtedly meant that he was from the middle world or the upper world. No wonder he was so strong and had a 7th grade spiritual stratagem robe. This person did not look like he was from the land of sanguinity. Moreover, he seemed to have just arrived at the land of sanguinity. Yi Fuqian did not know why he was here. Nietion glanced at him. He did not want to talk nonsense with him anymore and turned to leave. Even if he was from a similar world, Nietion did not care. If he put away his arrogance and asked nicely, perhaps Nietion would still answer him. But now, there was no need to answer at all. The person's handsome face froze slightly. A cold, murderous intent suddenly flashed in his eyes. He shouted arrogantly, "Brat, I'm talking to you. Did you not hear me?" Almost at the same time, a gush of sword will gushed out of his body and directly attacked Nietion. He was an ancient martial art practitioner from the summer world, but he was ignored by an ancient martial art practitioner from the lower worlds. How could he not be angry? The sharp sword will whizzed out, and the surrounding space actually froze in an instant. An ear-piercing sword hum sounded in the air, and a terrifying sword aura instantly bloomed. Sword force. Nietion's expression changed slightly. Then, the corner of his mouth curled up strangely. He did not expect that the other party was also a swordsman, and a swordsman with sword force at that. The strength of the 8th tier of the spirit wheel and the realm of sword force. This talent was indeed amazing. But in Nietion's eyes, it was far from enough. Chapter 692. In the void, a terrifying sword essence whizzed out, carrying a sharp killing intent, and charged toward Nietion. This person actually wanted to kill Nietion without saying a word. Are all warriors from the summer world as arrogant as you? Feeling the killing intent coming toward him, Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly. His body shook, and a layer of dark blue light lit up his body. The sword essence bombarded him, but it was actually absorbed by the layer of blue light. This person's sword essence was very strong, but it was too weak for Nietion. He could easily absorb this sword essence with just the heavenly water pole Yuan armor. It was very unusual for a warrior from the Sumeru world to suddenly appear in the 3,000 small worlds. Before Nietion figured out this person's identity, he didn't dare to act rashly. Brat, the person's sword didn't hurt Nietion at all. Instead, he was humiliated by Nietion. His face suddenly became extremely embarrassed, and even his neck turned red. I'll kill you. He flew into a rage out of humiliation. A long sword appeared in his hand, and the sword light was dazzling. He actually wanted to attack again. Nietion furrowed his brows. He could tolerate this person once, but he would not allow it to happen a second time. Killing intent flashed in his eyes. If this guy really didn't know what was good for him, Nietion would definitely not be polite anymore. Shinkong, stop. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in the void. Immediately, a middle-aged man in white appeared. He was tall and very elegant. Teacher. Shinkong immediately put away his long sword when the middle-aged man in white appeared. He was very respectful. Teacher? Nietion's eyes narrowed. He looked at the middle-aged man and used his divine sense to probe, but it seemed to be a bottomless ocean, which surprised him. Even with his mind power, he couldn't sense this person's strength. This undoubtedly meant that the other party was very likely a Heavenly Evolution Realm warrior. A Heavenly Evolution Realm warrior couldn't possibly appear in the 3,000 small worlds. This also proved that Shinkong didn't lie. They were from the upper world of the 3,000 small worlds, the Sumeru world. It was strange for two people from the Sumeru realm to suddenly appear in the 3,000 lesser realms. The middle-aged man swept his gaze across Nietion and the others. There was an unconcealable astonishment in his eyes. He never thought that he would meet such powerful people when he had just arrived in the 3,000 small worlds. You're very strong. At this moment, another figure descended from the sky and landed beside the middle-aged man. It was a young man in his 20s. The man's gaze was fixed on Nietion from beginning to end. His eyes were a little strange as he said directly, Your sword intent is very strong. This is the most terrifying sword intent I've ever seen. Nyetion's gaze couldn't help but tremble when he saw the man who had suddenly appeared. The latter was actually a swordsman at the sword spirit stage. This person was only about 20 years old, but his sword Dao strength had actually reached the sword spirit. It was truly terrifying. This kind of sword Dao talent was extremely shocking. One must know that even the current Nyetion was only at the sword form realm. If the person before him could continue to grow, he would definitely become an expert at the pinnacle of the sword Dao. However, this person's eyes were very cold. There was a sense of coldness and ruthlessness in them. There was also a hint of killing intent. You're from the Sumeru world? Nyetion's gaze darkened slightly as he asked indifferently. Yes. The middle-aged man nodded slightly. He didn't have the slightest bit of arrogance. Instead, he smiled and said, "My name is Sun Hai. This is my disciple, Xing Kong. This is my junior, Sikong Wuji. Xing Kong offended your excellency just now. Thank you for your leniency." With that, Sun Hai looked at Xing Kong and said in a deep voice, "Xing Kong, apologize to this young master." Xing Kong was stunned on the spot. His mouth was wide open, and he couldn't say a word for a long time. He was still thinking about Sun Hai's words. What did Nyetion mean by showing mercy just now? Could it be that Nyetion's strength was above Xing Kang's? He, Xing Kong, was a warrior at the 8th tier of the divine wheel and a swordsman with sword momentum. How could he lose to someone from the lower worlds? Xing Kong, you don't have to think about it anymore. His combat ability is indeed above yours. If you were to fight him head-on, you wouldn't even be able to take one strike from him. Just as Xing Kong was racking his brains to think, Sikong Wuji suddenly spoke. His voice was cold, and his expression was cold. It was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. Nyetion's gaze froze. Xing Kong was in his 20s and was Sun Hai's disciple. However, Sikong Wuji was also in his 20s and was actually Sun Hai's junior. This relationship was a little strange. Xing Kang's expression became even uglier. He glanced at Sikong Wuji. Although his eyes were filled with unwillingness, he still took a step forward and walked in front of Nyetion. He said in a deep voice, "I'm sorry for what happened just now." Nyetion smiled faintly. Since Xing Kong had already apologized, there was no need for him to continue pestering him. He had already discovered that Xing Kong didn't care much about Sun Hai's words, but he was very afraid of Sikong Wuji. It seemed that in his eyes, Sikong Wuji, this junior uncle, was more dignified than Sun Hai. "May I know your name, Your Excellency?" Sun Hai's face was kind, but there was a hidden meaning in his eyes. "My name is Nyetion." Nyetion nodded slightly, and the people around him also said their names. Sun Hai nodded slightly, but he was quite surprised in his heart. He didn't expect that there was such a powerful person in the 3,000 small worlds, especially Tang Hao, who gave him a feeling that he was not weaker than him. "Mr. Sun Hai, you're a martial artist from the Sumeru world. Why did you come to the 3,000 small worlds?" Nyetion didn't want to talk nonsense, so he asked directly. Well, Sun Hai hesitated. He didn't want to explain his purpose of coming. To catch someone. Sikong Wuji didn't care about anything, so he said directly, "To catch someone." Nyetion looked at Sikong Wuji and asked directly. Sikong Wuji's face was cold. He said indifferently, "It's none of your business." Nyetion's eyes slightly narrowed. Sikong Wuji was right. They were just strangers who met by chance. He had no reason to care about other people's business. After saying that, Sikong Wuji's figure flickered and directly left. Sun Hai was slightly embarrassed. He said, "Young Master Nya, please don't mind him. My junior brother didn't mean to hurt you. That's just his temper." In fact, Sikong Wuji's attitude towards Nyetion could be considered good. Normally, he wouldn't even bother to talk to others. Nyetion smiled faintly. He didn't care about it. Without staying any longer, Nyetion said goodbye to Sun Hai and left immediately. Sun Hai looked at the backs of Nyetion and the others, and his eyebrows slowly furrowed. At this time, Sikong Wuji's figure appeared again. "Uncle Sikong, you just said that guy's sword intent is the most terrifying sword intent you have ever seen. Is that true?" Shin Kong suddenly remembered what Sikon Wuji had said and couldn't help but ask. Yes. Sikon Wuji nodded indifferently. Shin Kong was stunned for a moment, and then asked again, "Is his sword intent stronger than your innate sword intent?" Yes. Sikon Wuji nodded again. At this time, Sun Hai couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't expect Sikon Wuji to admit that his sword intent was inferior to others. His sword intent was comparable to the innate sword intent. Junior brother, how is Nie Tian's sword intent compared to the Sky Sword ancestors? Sun Hai suddenly thought of something and asked in horror. Sikon Wuji's cold face finally showed a trace of expression. He frowned and said in a deep voice, "If the ancestor suppressed his sword principle to the same level as Nie Tian, he definitely wouldn't be a match for Nie Tian." Chapter 693. The closer they got to the center of the land of blood massacre, the thicker the smell of blood became. Nie Tian, I can only bring you up to here. Ruiyu coughed dryly. Her eyes were filled with reluctance, but there was nothing she could do. The smell of blood had a stimulating effect on the blood seal. If they went any further, he would not be able to withstand the blood seal. Okay. Nie Tian nodded. He turned to look at Tawny and said, "Miss Li, please take care of him. I will definitely get the Red Lotus demonic essence back for you." Hu Shaoli agreed and didn't stay any longer. She immediately left with Ruiyu. The next battle would be extremely cruel. Even if Ruiyu and Tawny stayed, they would not be of much help. Instead, they would become a burden. Nie Tian, Tang Hao, and Elder Yi continued to move forward. After a while, they felt that the air around them was filled with the smell of blood. It was as if they were in a swamp, and breathing gradually became difficult. Nie Tian locked his eyes and tensed up. He did not know what kind of enemy they would encounter next. At that moment, Nie Tian sensed something and shouted, "Watch out!" Swoosh! The next moment, a black light surged out violently. The Reaper's chain. Nie Tian could see clearly that it was the Reaper's chain that suddenly attacked them. On the Reaper's chain, the power of the demon sealing curse surged, and the air was filled with a sinister and strange aura. Break! Elder Yi took a step forward and released a terrifying knife will. He slashed down with the reverse blade of dark essence. Bang! A dazzling knife light exploded in the air, and the Reaper's chain was broken. Old Man Yi was now at the 7th tier of the Divine Wheel and had reached the soul of the Blade Realm. He was just one step away from comprehending the profound meaning of the blade. Even an ordinary 8th tier divine, ancient martial art practitioner, might not be able to withstand the power of his blade. The Reaper's chain had chained Elder Yi for 30 or 40 years, and he hated it to the bone. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Following that, the sound of something breaking through the air sounded. In the air, countless chains surged over like a group of dancing snakes, and the smell of blood in the air became even stronger. Nie Tian and Elder Yi's eyes narrowed as they attacked at the same time. Their swords and sabers joined hands, and resplendent saber lights and sword shadows blossomed in the air. Walala! The sound of iron chains breaking rang out. The endless death god's chains were shattered by Nie Tian and Elder Yi's joint attack. These death god's chains were even weaker than the 4 netherworld ghosts. They weren't even worth mentioning. Yugui, get out here! Elder Yi roared furiously and slashed down with his saber. The soaring saber light parted the heavy blood mist. The turbid chi waves in the air were pushed to the sides. The space within a few thousand meters shook violently. Nie Tian was shocked. The strength of the saber soul was indeed terrifying. Let's charge! Nie Tian roared. They had already been exposed, so there was no point in hiding anymore. Kill! At that moment, the shouts of killing could be heard. Hundreds of Shui 2 guards swarmed towards Nie Tian and the others. Die! Nie Tian's lips curled into a cold smile. He slashed down with his sword Absolute Heaven Slash. The shocking sword light fell from the sky, and the ground was filled with ghostly wails. It was a tragic sight. Elder Yi was even more brutal. His body was like a steel saber, and he directly rushed towards the Shui 2 guards. He roared, Yugui, do you think these useless soldiers and crab generals can stop us? The three of them rushed out of the encirclement of the Shui-Tu guards and ran for a few thousand meters, but they came to a spacious area. Nie Tian felt that the smell of blood was getting thinner, and he was confused. "Master, look at the sky." At that moment, the corpse lord's voice was heard from the chaos original coffin. Nie Tian suddenly raised his head, and the scene in front of him completely stunned him. A giant blood-colored altar was floating in mid-air. The blood-colored altar was burning with endless flames, like a giant flame array, floating in mid-air, emitting an ancient and solemn aura. The entire altar looked like a giant array, and the dancing flames resembled the runes of the array. At the center of the altar was a strange green liquid. The green liquid was wrapped in endless flames, and it trembled from time to time, causing the entire altar to shake violently. Liquid flame. Nie Tian gulped, and his heart began to race as he sensed the life force within the green liquid. A name appeared in his mind: Nirvana, Sacred Heart. The green liquid was the legendary 8th demonic fire, the Nirvana, Sacred Heart. Nie Tian could tell that the flames burning on the altar were all from the Nirvana, Sacred Heart. It was like the beating heart of the altar, ensuring that the altar could continue to exist. The Nirvana Sacred Heart could save Mo Rushi. How could Nie Tian not be excited? Most importantly, the Nirvana Sacred Heart was different from other demonic fires. It did not have any destructive power, only a powerful life force. In other words, Nie Tian could directly obtain the Nirvana Sacred Heart. After calming himself down, Nie Tian looked around, but there was no one around. This was very strange. The blood-colored altar, which could resurrect those in the land of sanguinity, was actually unguarded. I can't care too much. I'll give a try first. Nie Tian's gaze became passionate, and he could not resist the temptation of the Nirvana Sacred Heart. He took a step forward, and his figure soared into the sky, heading straight for the Nirvana Sacred Heart. "Teacher, Mr. Nie." Tang Hao and Elder Yi saw Nie Tian suddenly rushing out, and they simultaneously exclaimed. The flame altar was very strange, and Nie Tian was actually rushing over. Wasn't he seeking death? Nie Tian did not care. His figure moved like the wind, and he instantly passed through the layers of flames, reaching out his hand to grab the Nirvana Sacred Heart. "You're courting death." Just when he was about to grab the Nirvana Sacred Heart, a strange voice suddenly rang out. Shortly after, a sharp claw appeared in the air, flickering with cold light, and directly struck at Nie Tian. "Huh?" Nie Tian's gaze trembled, and he tilted his body slightly. However, he was still injured by the sharp edge of the claw, and 3 frightening wounds appeared on his right arm. Blood flowed continuously. In the next moment, a coffin appeared in the void, floating in mid-air, releasing a sinister and strange aura. Nie Tian stabilized his body, and he was quite surprised. He actually did not notice the existence of this person just now. "Kid, something like the Nirvana Sacred Heart is not something you can touch." The coffin shook a little, and a ghostly voice came out, extremely ear-piercing. "Stop acting mysterious. Get out here." Nie Tian's gaze slightly tightened, and then he immediately shouted coldly, slashing down with his sword. Sword intent erupted from his entire body, and thunder roared in the air. A huge sword shadow suddenly appeared, slashing at the coffin like a mountain. "Huh?" A strange voice came from the coffin, and then it shook violently. The coffin's lid opened, and a figure suddenly came out. Another sharp claw appeared in the void. Boom! The sword shadow and the sharp claw collided. Nie Tian's figure retreated a few steps, and he stabilized his body. He looked at the person who came out of the coffin, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. "It really is you." Chapter 694. In the air, a skinny old man appeared in front of Nie Tian. He looked haggard like a mummy. Even his body released a cold aura, as if he had just crawled out of a graveyard. "You know me?" Sir Shui-Tu's skinny face made a frightening expression. He was very surprised. Nie Tianling smiled coldly and said, "A few days ago, Yue hired 6 mummies to set up the severing blood seal in Sumi Ling capital. You were one of them. Huh? Sir Shuetu frowned and said, you didn't die. If Nye Tian had been at the Sumi martial meet that day, he should have been dead. Why was he still alive? Yue hasn't told you yet. Not only am I not dead, everyone in the Sumi martial meet is not dead. Nye Tian smiled faintly. Cold disdain flashed in his eyes. Yue, you piece of trash. Sir Shuetu's skinny face stiffened. Then, a cold look flashed in his eyes. He said coldly, you actually dared to kill your way into the land of bloody massacre. But since you're here, don't even think about leaving. Sir Shuetu did not know who Nye Tian was, but he knew that he could not let Nye Tian leave alive. You? Nye Tianling smiled coldly. He had already sensed that Sir Shuetu's strength was at the 9th tier of the divine wheel, but his aura was a little weak. It seemed that he had not fully recovered from leaving the land of bloody massacre a few days ago. Arrogant! Sir Shuetu screamed and slapped out with his palm. The air suddenly shook, and the surrounding nirvana flames were dispersed. Nye Tian frowned slightly, but he did not dodge. Instead, he stabbed out with his sword, and a terrifying sword will instantly bloomed. Boom! The two of them clashed at close range, and the space shook violently. Even a Nirvana's sacred heart was affected. Waves of violent flames were released, but they did not hurt anyone. Instead, they had a very good healing effect. This was the magic of the Nirvana sacred heart. Its powerful vitality could even bring the dead back to life. Tang Hao and Elder Yi watched from below. They were eager to help Nye Tian. Be careful. However, at that moment, Elder Yi suddenly roared, turned around, and slashed at Tang Hao. The saber intent was ferocious and domineering, and the dazzling saber radiance released the sharpest killing intent. Boom! In the void, a figure appeared like a ghost. There was a violent roar, and the blade light seemed to have encountered a huge obstruction. It stagnated in the void for a moment, and then with a groan, a pool of blood appeared on the ground. The ghostly figure disappeared in an instant. It's another ghost. Tang Hao's gaze trembled violently. He had been too concerned with Nye Tian's battle just now and hadn't noticed that the nether ghost was already lurking beside him. If not for Elder Ye's timely discovery, the nether ghost's sneak attack would have been a success, and he would have been seriously injured. My good brother, your sword Dao has improved again. Shouldn't you thank me for giving you the Grim Reaper's chains back then? The nether ghost's voice rang out in the air, but it was very strange. It seemed to be coming from all directions, and it was impossible to find the source of the voice. Nether Ghost. When Elder Ye's scar was touched, his face became ferocious. He said in a cold voice, after so many years, you still only know how to stab people in the back? I, Yi Linyun, am here. Do you dare to fight me? The roar shook the heavens and earth. Waves of saber intent permeated the air, forming a large invisible net that covered the surroundings. The realm of the Sword Soul allowed Elder Yi to have a stronger perception. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to detect the nether ghost's existence. The large net formed by the saber intent did not detect the nether ghost's hiding place. Tang Hao and Elder Yi looked at each other and nodded at the same time. Their figures directly flew up to help Nye Tian. Honorable Venerables, the map of the spiritual energy ley lines is with Nye Tian. I have already brought him to you. As for whether you can keep him here, it will depend on your own abilities. The nether ghost's voice rang out again, and then disappeared without a trace. This guy was very cunning. He actually chose to watch the battle. 6 honorable venerables? Nye Tian was slightly stunned, and his nerves tightened. Just as he finished speaking, the void suddenly shook, and another 5 coffins appeared. Kill him first. Seeing that the situation was not good, Nye Tian roared and stabbed out with his sword. The power of the 3rd level of sword intent instantly burst out, and thunder and lightning appeared in the sky, pressing towards Venerable Shui Tuesday. The sword shadow was like a mountain, and the sword chi was like the sea. Venerable Shui, too, felt a mighty force, and his face turned pale. He wanted to escape, but he was shocked to find that the space around him was frozen, and he couldn't move at all. Die! Seeing this, Elder Yi slashed down with his saber. The bright saber light fell, and blood splattered. The first venerable Shui, too, was dead. Huh? A surprised voice came from the 5 coffins at the same time, and then the coffins opened. 5 skinny old men appeared, and their faces were no different from the previous person, and they all looked like dried corpses. These 5 people were the people who had appeared at the Meru martial meet. Including the one who had just died, there were exactly 6 of them. The 5 people looked at Nietian and the others with extremely gloomy eyes, and they couldn't wait to tear them to pieces. Tang Hao, get rid of them, Nie Tianling said coldly. Then he raised his head and looked at the Nirvana sacred heart in the sky, and his eyes flickered with passion. These 6 old men were only honorables of the land of sanguinity. Previously, he heard from Raindrop that the land of sanguinity had 2 more honorables. If those 2 honorables were here, it would not be good. Yes, Tang Hao replied, and his body released a gloomy chill. The myriad calamity ghost, I was activated again. Nietian no longer cared about venerable Shui Tuesday. He fiercely stepped on the ground, and his figure flew again, rushing towards the Nirvana sacred heart. When the 5 honorables saw Nietian's action, they were all shocked and immediately attacked Nietian. Tang Hao and Elder Yi also attacked at the same time, blocking the 5 people. Nietian's figure sped up, and when he was only a few meters away from the Nirvana sacred heart, a black cheese suddenly whistled past and swept the Nirvana sacred heart away. Nietian, what exactly is this altar flame? Why are you risking your life for it? In the next moment, Yu Gui's voice was heard, and it carried a thick sense of ridicule. Bastard! Nietian had almost obtained the Nirvana sacred heart, but Yu Gui had beaten him to it. One could imagine the frustration in his heart. More importantly, Yu Gui had been concealing his figure. Even with Nietian's perception, he could not sense his existence. It was very troublesome. If he had known earlier, he would have brought Jean de Bao along. His 3,000 demon god seals was even stronger than the rainbow pupils. Yu Gui, how dare you steal the Nirvana sacred heart? Not only was Nietian angry, but the 5 honorables of the land of sanguinity were even more furious. Humph! Yu Gui laughed sinisterly and said, Honorables, I have worked for the land of sanguinity for so many years. Just take the Nirvana sacred heart as my reward for all these years. I believe you will not object, right? As the sinister laughter faded, Yu Gui's aura disappeared again. You are not allowed to leave. Nietian roared. The Nirvana sacred heart was the key to saving Mo Rushi. He could not let Yu Gui take it away. Chapter 695. Nietian stabbed out with his sword, and an overwhelming number of sword shadows spread out, filling up the surrounding space of thousands of meters. In an instant, the sword shadows covered the entire sky, and it was extremely dazzling. In the void, a large screen condensed from sword shadows moved at an extremely fast speed. At the same time, Nietian's Sword of the Warp and Weft was instantly activated, and the sword screen that followed the movement spread forward. As long as Spirit Ghost had not left, he would be able to sense the latter's existence. Nietian estimated that, given Spirit Ghost's temperament, he would definitely not leave. He would lurk on the side and watch the battle between Lord Xuetu and Tang Hao. Sure enough, the sword wheel around Nietian's body surged, and he sensed a blurry black shadow moving at an extremely fast speed. Spirit Ghost, you are still here. Sensing the location of Spirit Ghost, Nietian did not hesitate. The sword wheel in his body soared to the extreme, and the Sword of the Warp and Weft locked on to Spirit Ghost. Huh. In the void, a surprised voice sounded. Spirit Ghost obviously did not expect that Nietian could actually detect his existence. Brat, since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. Spirit Ghost no longer hid his figure and walked out of the void. No matter what, he was also a warrior in the 9th tier of the Divine Wheel. Even if he was not good at fighting head-on, he was still confident that he could defeat Nietian, who was only in the 4th tier of the Divine Wheel. Spirit Ghost's figure appeared. His face was a little thin, and his eyes were like the abyss, revealing a suffocating feeling that made people feel despair. Spirit Ghost was the pavilion master of Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion and the only assassin at the Black Emperor level in Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. How strong was he exactly? In fact, in a one-on-one fight, even Tang Hao might not be a match for Spirit Ghost. The most terrifying thing about Spirit Ghost was that he could hide. If not for Elder Yi just now, Tang Hao would have been seriously injured by Spirit Ghost. Spirit Ghost raised his hand, and a majestic black chi filled the void, directly shattering the sword shadow in the air. Nie Tian's eyes slightly narrowed. The strength of Spirit Ghost was beyond his expectations. Judging from the palm just now, the ghost was much stronger than Mou, and even stronger than Mo Zhaojing. Perhaps, in the entire 3,000 small worlds, only Tang Hao could fight him head-on. "Brat, you kill my son. Today, I will avenge him," Yu Guwei said calmly. Although he was avenging his son, there was no anger on his face. In fact, there was no expression on his face. It was as if taking revenge was something that didn't matter to him. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. There was no fear on his face. Instead, there was a hint of a smile. Although Nether Ghost was very strong, it was not enough to make Nie Tian afraid. The current Nie Tian was strong enough to challenge any Spirit Wheel Realm warrior. Nether Ghost noticed the smile on Nie Tian's face. His eyes narrowed, and he sneered, "Interesting. You're the only one who isn't afraid in front of this king." However, this was no longer important. In this world, anyone who sees my true face must die. You're no exception. Is that so? Nie Tian smiled calmly, mentally prepared for anything. Yes. The next moment, Nether Ghost's voice fell. At the same time, his figure flickered and directly appeared beside Nie Tian. He was less than 5 meters away from Nie Tian, and a tyrannical palm shot out. A golden light suddenly appeared on Nie Tian's body, and he subconsciously activated the dragon scale shield. Crack! Nether Ghost's palm heavily hit the dragon scale shield. With a crisp sound, the shield directly collapsed. Nie Tian's figure flew out, drawing a line of blood in the air. After flying for dozens of meters, the proud sword wings appeared on Nie Tian's back. With a flap of the wings, his figure stopped. Puff! Nie Tian spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face turned pale. He didn't expect Nether Ghost's move to be so strange. He moved almost instantaneously, as if he was tearing space apart. Not dead? While Nie Tian was surprised, Nether Ghost was even more surprised. He initially thought that Nie Tian would definitely die from the palm, but he didn't expect Nie Tian to still be alive with only minor injuries. The dragon scale chi in Nie Tian's body was strengthened by the 9-star dragon vein, and it wasn't any weaker than the heavenly water armor. More importantly, the dragon scale chi didn't require any time to react. As long as he was in danger, it would automatically activate. If it wasn't for the dragon scale shield, Nie Tian's body would have been penetrated by the palm. Nie Tian's eyes flickered slightly. Without hesitation, he performed a hand seal, and the force of heaven and earth suddenly changed. Nie Tian was going to use the 3 seals of the divine god of battle. The force of heaven and earth instantly changed. Boundless yuan force of heaven and earth surged around Nie Tian and surged into his body. Nether Ghost sensed that something was wrong. His eyes flickered with a strange light, and he smiled cold. "You're not strong enough, so you want to borrow the force of heaven and earth? I won't let you have your way." Following his words, a boundless black aura burst out from Nether Ghost's body. The black aura was the same as the energy in the bodies of the Yuming elders. It was a netherworld ghostly chi, but his aura was a lot stronger than the Yuming elders. The netherworld ghostly chi howled in the air. Under the dark clouds, it felt like countless ferocious ghosts were roaring, resulting in a terrifying sight. Nether Ghost was using the netherworld ghostly chi to disrupt the force of heaven and earth, preventing Nie Tian from absorbing the spiritual energy of the heavens and earth. "Do you think you can stop me?" Nie Tian's pupils contracted slightly. His eyes flickered with a vicious look as he let out a roar. His aura skyrocketed, and a raging vortex appeared around him, absorbing the spiritual energy of the heavens and earth crazily. This time, not only was he going to absorb the spiritual energy of the heavens and earth, but he was also going to absorb the netherworld ghostly chi from Netherghost. Netherworld ghostly chi, how dare you absorb it? You're courting death. Netherghost roared. The netherworld ghostly chi was incomparably violent. Nietion actually dared to directly absorb it. This was absolutely suicide. But Nietion seemed to have gone mad. The domain origin array within his body rumbled, and a stream of netherworld ghostly chi rushed into his body. However, it was directly swallowed by the power of the stars and turned into Nietion's origin force. The netherworld ghostly chi released by netherworld ghostly chi was simply providing Nietion with origin force. A moment later, Nietion's aura soared to the extreme. A vast power gradually condensed in the void, like a giant beast that could swallow the heavens. Netherghost suddenly felt something was wrong. His eyes trembled. Why was Nietion absorbing so much netherworld ghostly chi, and yet nothing happened to him? How is this possible? How is this possible? For the first time, netherworld ghostly chi stiffened. The netherworld ghostly chi was refined from the souls of tens of thousands of martial artists. It was violent and bloody. If an ordinary martial artist were to absorb just a little, their meridians would be thrown into chaos and their body would explode. But after Nietion absorbed the netherworld ghostly chi, not only did nothing happen, but his aura became even stronger. How is this possible? Netherworld ghostly chi, do you really think I'm afraid of the netherworld ghostly chi? At this time, Nietion's cold and mocking voice sounded out. If I was afraid of the netherworld ghostly chi, how could I have killed old Yu and Ming? A mighty voice sounded out. Nietion's aura was as vast as a mountain. Chapter 696. Nietion stood proudly in the air. His eyes were cold and emotionless. The soul-severing heavenly seal, the supreme seal of the three seals of the divine god of battle, was unleashed once again, causing the sky to tremble and the heavens and earth to change color. What a terrifying martial skill! Netherghost's eyes widened as his heart skipped a beat. For the first time, his eyes were filled with fear, but it was only for a fleeting moment before it was replaced by a ruthless look. Nietion, you're strong indeed, but it's not enough to kill me. Netherghost sneered and raised his arm. A cloud of black chi appeared and formed a giant snake that was a few hundred meters long in the air. It bared its fangs and emitted an eerie aura. Nietion, you should be proud that you're able to force me to use my ghostly nether snake even in death. The ghostly nether snake opened its mouth and let out an ear-piercing shriek. Then, its giant body rolled into the sky and charged toward the soul-severing heavenly seal. Boom! The ghostly nether snake and the soul-severing heavenly seal collided in midair, resulting in an earth-shattering explosion. The surrounding dark clouds gathered and formed a giant mushroom cloud that soared into the sky. How powerful! Tang Hao and the others were stunned when they saw the scene from a few thousand meters away. It seemed that Nietion had yet to display his true strength at the Meru martial gathering. The mushroom cloud that soared into the sky only dissipated after a long time. Nietion's figure was knocked a few dozen meters back due to the tremendous impact. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face turned pale. At that moment, the cloud of black chi reappeared in the sky, and the ghostly nether snake's figure gradually took shape. The ghostly nether snake was unharmed after blocking the soul-severing heavenly seal. What a strange strength! Nietion raised his head and looked at the giant snake in the sky. His eyes could not help but tremble. Since Netherghost was the pavilion master of a Ling Xian heavenly pavilion, he was ruthless and cunning. It went without saying that he had many tricks up his sleeves. Nietion didn't expect a soul-severing heavenly seal to be able to kill the Netherghost, but the latter receiving the heavenly seal so easily surprised him. The ghostly nether snake's body rolled, and as it flicked its tongue, the dark clouds in the sky surged. The netherworld ghost chi in the air became more and more condensed, and the space seemed to be frozen. Tion, I've said it before. I'll let you keep the demonic stream sword for now. Now, it's time to return it to me. Prepare to die. Nether Ghost's figure flickered, and he stepped on the Nether Ghost snake's huge head. He was like a demon god, descending to the mortal world as he charged over. The surrounding space was instantly tightened, and a bloody aura rolled over, covering the sky and earth. Tion's eyes trembled slightly. He activated the space of his divine wheel and the sword of warp and weft at the same time. His entire body was like a sharp sword, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. He flapped his wings slightly and slashed out forcefully with the sword of absolute heaven slash. A terrifying sword will whizzed out, raging flames burning the sea. As the sword will surged out, the star's soul steel in Tion's body sensed it. The power of the star soul was stimulated, and an endless amount of star power gushed out and merged with the sword will. In the sky, a huge flaming sword appeared. A terrifying sword was on the inside, and raging flames on the outside. You're courting death. When Nether Ghost saw that Tion did not dodge and actually chose to fight him head-on, his face suddenly turned cold. He roared furiously, "Ghostly Nether Snake, kill him!" As he roared, the ghostly Nether Snake opened its huge mouth, and a strange black light shot out from between its two fangs. Poison! Tion felt a strong and pungent smell, which made him frown. The black light actually contained an extremely strong poisonous gas. Boom! In the sky, the huge flaming sword and the poisonous black light collided with a loud bang. Immediately, the flames spread, and the fiery light shot up into the sky. In the endless fiery light, a black gas broke through the sky like the wind and lightning. Pooh! Without giving Tion any time to react, the sound of flesh being pierced rang out. Blood gushed out from Tion's shoulder. The intense pain didn't cause Tion to cry out, but a strange energy seeped into his body through the wound, causing him to frown as his countenance sank. Tion, you've been poisoned by my netherworld corpse poison. Obediently wait for your death. Nether Ghost stood on top of the ghostly Nether Snake, laughing maniacally. He couldn't wait to see the scene of Tion dying. As the netherworld corpse poison entered his body, the skin around Tion's wound instantly turned black. He examined his body and discovered that all the meridians in his body had been infected by the corpse poison. The toxicity of the corpse poison was extremely strong, beyond imagination. In the blink of an eye, it directly invaded all the meridians in Tion's four limbs. Roar! Next, the corpse poison chi touched the 9 dragon-shaped energy meridians, and an intense dragon roar came from Tion's body. In the next moment, an unbelievable scene appeared. 9 illusory dragon shadows suddenly surged out from the 9 dragon-shaped energy meridians. The dragon shadows surged in all the meridians in his 4 limbs and directly swallowed the corpse poison. Such a strong dragon meridian. Seeing this scene, even Tion himself was stunned. He could feel that the netherworld corpse poison was stronger than ordinary 7th grade poison pills, but it was directly swallowed by the dragon-shaped energy meridians. It was simply too terrifying. It seemed like the 9-star dragon meridian physique not only gave Tion a very strong recovery ability, but also allowed him to ignore all kinds of poison. It was very abnormal. In the next moment, Tion's body shook, and a turbid gas was dispersed. Even the wound on his shoulder began to heal slowly. You're fine? That's impossible. Yugue's cold eyes gradually became surprised. Originally, he had been waiting to see the scene of Tion being tortured to death by the corpse poison. He even intended to control Tion and make the latter his subordinate. Who would have thought that Tion would be completely fine? This was simply impossible for Yugue. Even a peak spirit wheel warrior couldn't withstand the netherworld corpse poison, unless the heaven evolution realm warrior's true meaning of heaven could resist the corpse poison. However, Tion was clearly only a 4th-tier spirit wheel warrior. How could his martial body compare to a heaven evolution realm warrior's? All of this was too unbelievable. A trace of fear appeared in your eyes again. Niet Tion expelled the corpse poison from his body and locked his eyes firmly on you. Since the other party had taken the Nirvana's sacred heart, he would never let him escape. However, your strength exceeded Niet Tion's expectations, which made him much more cautious. Niet Tion. Yugue looked at Niet Tion, and his eyes flickered. He said, "Don't you want the altar fire? I'm willing to trade with you. Give me the spiritual vein map, and I'll give you the altar fire. How about that?" The altar fire? Niet Tianling sneered. Yugue didn't know that he had the Nirvana's sacred heart, the 8th demonic fire, nor did he know the power of the Nirvana's sacred heart. If he knew that as long as he integrated with the Nirvana's sacred heart, he would almost have an immortal body, then he wouldn't have traded with Niet Tion. Seeing that Niet Tion seemed to be tempted, Yugue shouted, "How about it? Do you want to trade?" Chapter 697. You don't want to trade? Yugue was slightly surprised. He didn't expect Niet Tion to refuse so readily. Niet Tion suddenly raised the corner of his mouth and sneered. "Yugue, do you really think I'm a 3-year-old child? With your means, will you trade with me? Even if I hand over the map, you won't give me the altar fire." Yugue was vicious. Now that he had the upper hand, and he had unpredictable means of hiding, Niet Tion couldn't be at ease to make a deal with such a person. Even if Yugue really wanted to trade with him, he would definitely follow him. Niet Tion didn't want an invisible enemy to follow him every day. Therefore, he only had one thought for Yugue: kill. Only by killing Yugue would Niet Tion be at ease. Oh, Nether Ghost's eyes widened, and his face gradually grew cold. Then he smiled coldly and said, "Niet Tion, you're indeed a tough opponent." He turned around and looked into the distance. Tang Hao and Yi Linyan were fighting against the 5 blood slaughter lords. The former two obviously had the upper hand. It wouldn't be long before the 5 blood slaughter lords lost their lives. Damn it, why haven't the 2 high lord arrived yet? Yugue cursed in his heart. The blood-colored altar had been invaded, but only the 6 venerables guarding the altar had appeared. The 2 high lords of the land of bloody massacre hadn't appeared. This was very strange. Niet Tion had the same question in his heart. He was now convinced that the people from the land of bloody massacre must have come from the Shumi world. The blood slaughter lord's strength was already at the 9th tier of the divine wheel, so the blood slaughter lord's strength must be at the heavenly evolution realm. If the 6 venerables hadn't left the land of bloody massacre a few days ago and hadn't fully recovered their strength, Tang Hao, an elder, Yi might not be their match. Niet Tion hadn't used the forbidden move of the proud sword incantation and the heaven shrouding totem because he wanted to deal with the 2 high lords. What surprised him was that the 2 high lords hadn't appeared yet. Could it be? Suddenly, Niet Tion thought of something and his face stiffened. Sun Hai and Sikon Wuji are here to catch the 2 high lords. The 2 supremacies came from the Shumi world. Sun Hai and the others also came from the Shumi world. And Sikon Wuji said that they were here to capture someone. Who would they capture? It could only be those 2 high lords. Otherwise, who would be worthy of the Sumeru world's martial artists personally coming to the 3,000 small worlds? With this thought in mind, Niet Tion was even more certain that the reason why the 2 reverends did not come was because they had encountered Sikon Wuji and the others. A cold smile appeared at the corner of Niet Tion's mouth. Nether Ghost, your 2 masters won't show up. You're going to die beyond the shadow of a doubt today. He took a step forward in midair, his aura threatening. Yugue was stunned. Seeing how confident Niet Tion was, his heart couldn't help but sink. Could it be that Niet Tion had helpers that were entangled with the 2 high lords? Thinking of this, Yugue's heart trembled slightly, and he decisively made a decision. Cut the Gordian knot and quickly get rid of Niet Tion. Niet Tion did not look like he was bluffing. If he waited until Tang Hao and Elder Yi killed the 5 venerables, it would be troublesome. Thinking of this, Yugue no longer hesitated. His figure flashed, and a mass of black light gushed out. In the void, another netherworld ghost snake appeared. Seeing this scene, Niet Tion's eyes trembled slightly. He didn't expect that not only he had reserved his strength, but also Yugue had. Very well, it seems that the real battle has just begun. Nyetion faintly smiled. Sword intense surged out from his whole body, and several blood-red lights shot out from his body. At this moment, he no longer had any scruples. In the void, endless sword chi filled the air. The swordsman's blood chi surged out, and the surging sword intent became cold and bloody. Proud sword art, forbidden move, first style of the three swords of annihilation, weeping blood soul. Nyetion proudly stood in the void, and his majestic voice resounded. As his voice fell, a huge blood-red sword shadow that was hundreds of meters long suddenly pressed down. It was majestic and powerful, as if it could destroy and annihilate everything. So strong. Yugue looked at the huge sword shadow pressing down on his head, and his heart trembled slightly. His netherworld ghost snake seemed to be suppressed at this moment. The netherworld ghost snake was condensed from the strongest netherworld ghost chi and Yugue's dual snake origin spirits, but it was unexpectedly suppressed by Nyetion's sword. The sword intent in that blood-red sword shadow was unexpectedly overbearing to such an extent. Netherworld ghost snakes, kill for me. Yugue roared in a deep voice. The two snakes danced wildly and actually intertwined together. Their bodies fused together, turning into a double-headed snake. The air released a cold chill, and the netherworld ghost chi became even thicker. Two sharp black chi blades broke through the air and attacked at an extremely fast speed. Slash! Nyetion was fearless. He shouted in a deep voice, and the horrifying aura of the blood-red sword shadow instantly erupted. The earth-shattering sword had the power to destroy heaven and earth. Boom! Boom! There was a violent explosion, and the horrifying sword intent filled the air. Among the surging sword chi, a sword shadow suddenly appeared and pressed down on the double-headed snake. Oh no! Yugue was shocked and secretly trembled. He wanted to withdraw the netherworld ghost snakes, but it was too late. Hiss! Hiss! Two miserable screams sounded, and the netherworld ghost snakes turned into two masses of black chi, annihilated by the blood-red sword shadow. Weeping Blood Soul was a forbidden move. The ultimate sword intent contained in the swordsman's blood chi had a strong suppressive force against the netherworld ghost chi. Moreover, the Thunderbolt sword intent that Nyetion comprehended from the 9-star dragon vein also had a considerable suppressive force against the netherworld ghost chi, which was extremely mean and evil. Even if Yugue was a warrior in the 9th tier of the Divine Wheel, he still could not withstand the weeping Blood Soul. At the moment when the netherworld ghost snakes were slashed, Yugue screamed, and his body was blasted away by the airwaves. In the void, a blood-red light appeared, and the black figure disappeared again. Nyetion moved. Although his face was pale, his aura was incomparably fierce, and his eyes flashed with murderous light. Since he had already seriously injured Yugue, how could he let the latter escape? Yugue, you can't escape. A cold voice sounded, and the sky was filled with sword shadows again. Nyetion's figure was like lightning, and the aurora sword shadows surrounded him within a kilometer. As long as Yugue was within a kilometer of him, he would be detected. Following the bloodstains in the air, Nyetion's figure was extremely fast. In the next moment, he immediately discovered Yugue's hiding place. The corner of his mouth twitched into a cold smile, and the sword Absolute Heaven suddenly slashed down. This ruthless sword strike was determined to take Yugue's life. Nyetion, you forced me to do this. In the void, a black figure appeared, and Yugue's figure appeared. His whole body was a bloody mess, but his aura was still not weak. With a shake of his body, two masses of black chi gushed out from behind him, and a pair of black wings that were hundreds of meters long appeared. The wings covered the sky, and a cold aura spread out for a kilometer. Nether Ghost, is this your final move? Nyetion sensed that the power contained in the black wings was even more terrifying than that of the netherworld ghost snakes, but he still did not retreat. Instead, he sped up again. Chapter 698. The heaven-shrouding totem appeared again. It directly turned into a huge net that covered the sky and spread toward Yugue. This, Yugue suddenly raised his head and felt a vast and boundless power surging toward him. It gave him a feeling that he could not resist, as if this power was spreading from all directions, and he could not resist it at all. What kind of terrifying power was hidden in Nietion's body to be able to release such a huge martial skill? Yugue did not know that this was not a martial skill at all. Even Nietion himself did not know what the heaven-shrouding totem was. At the most critical moment, a single word emerged in Yugue's mind. Run. The heaven-shrouding totem made him feel a deep fear. He could not resist it at all, so he could only escape. Unfortunately, the moment the Yugue's wings were about to flap, he was shocked to find that the surrounding space had actually frozen, and a boundless power pressed down on his body, making him suddenly feel a sense of suffocation. The heaven-shrouding totem had once resisted the blood-severing seal of the 6 blood slaughter venerables. No matter how strong Yugue was, it was impossible for him to be stronger than the 6 blood slaughter venerables working together. In front of the heaven-shrouding totem, he had no power to fight back. In the next moment, the heaven-shrouding totem fell with a loud bang, directly imprisoning Yugue like a small fish. Yugue's wings flapped a few times, still trying to struggle, but the heaven-shrouding totem suddenly tightened, and his wings directly collapsed. Yugue raised his head in horror, and his eyes were filled with despair. Finally, he could not bear the fear of death, and his knees went soft. He knelt down and begged bitterly, "Nietion, I beg you, don't kill me. I'm willing to be your slave, be an ant under your feet, be your dog, be your most obedient servant. Don't kill me, don't kill me." At this time, Tang Hao and Elder Yi had already dealt with the 5 venerables. Looking at Yugue, who was imprisoned by the heaven-shrouding totem, their eyes revealed a deep contempt. Was he still the pavilion master of Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion? Was he still a martial artist? Was it so important to grovel and linger on while at death's door? Perhaps for some people, living was really important. But for others, living was not important. What was important was to live with dignity. You want to be my dog? You're not qualified. Nietion's lips curled up in disdain. As soon as he finished speaking, the killing intent in his eyes intensified. He turned to look at Elder Yi and said, "Elder Yi, make your move." Elder Yi had been tortured by the Nether Ghosts for 30 to 40 years, so the hatred in his heart was definitely even greater. This opportunity to act should be left to him. Elder Yi took a step forward. In addition to contempt, there was also a trace of regret in his eyes. He laughed wildly. "Yugue, look at you now. You don't look like a martial artist at all. Big brother Yi, what happened back then was all my fault. Help me plead for leniency. I will definitely repent." Yugue looked at Elder Yi with a hint of excitement in his eyes, but before he could finish speaking, a sharp blade light flashed. Blood splattered, and Yugue's head was separated from his body. Before he died, Yugue's eyes were filled with fear, unwillingness, and humiliation. Elder Yi finished off Yugue with a single slash. The regret in his eyes disappeared and was replaced by the sharpness of a swordsman. Nietion retracted the heaven-shrouding totem. His figure moved, and his divine sense swept over Yugue. An interspatial ring appeared in his hand. He probed and found the Nirvana Sacred Heart and a crimson ball of light in his palm. It was Tawny's red lotus chi. Nietion put away the Nirvana Sacred Heart and red lotus chi. He also put the interspatial ring into his bag. Since Yugue was the pavilion master of Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, he must have a lot of good things. "Sir, those 5 people are all dead." Tang Hao took a step forward and thought for a moment. Instead of calling Nietion teacher, he called him sir. "Let's go." Nietion's face was a little pale. He didn't want to stay any longer. Since he had already obtained the Nirvana Sacred Heart and Red Lotus Chi, there was no need to stay any longer. However, just as the 3 of them were about to leave, several figures suddenly descended from the sky. It's them." Nietion looked over. It was Sun Hai, Sikon Wuji, and the others. At that moment, apart from Sun Hai, Sikon Wuji, and Xing Kong, there were two other people. They were about 30 years old, and they looked fierce and unwilling. Nie Tian sensed the strength of those two people. One was at the second level of heavenly evolution, and the other was at the first level of heavenly evolution. However, these two people's chi meridians were sealed, and they were no different from ordinary people. Nie Tian guessed that these two people should be the two supremacies of the land of sanguinity, to be able to seal heaven evolution cultivators. The person who applied the seal was at least a level 7 sealer. Sealers were even rarer than alchemists, spirit weapon masters, and spirit formation masters. Ever since Nie Tian had been reborn, he didn't seem to have met a single sealer. Jean de Bayo had the 3,000 divine and demon seals, so he could barely be considered half a sealer. Nie Tian estimated that the number of sealers in the entire 3,000 small worlds was definitely less than 5. It's him. In the next moment, Nie Tian's gaze locked onto Sun Hai. He didn't sense Sun Hai's strength earlier, which meant that this person's mental energy was far superior to ordinary people. However, this person's aura was restrained, and he had a gentle temperament. He was different from ordinary cultivators, so this level 7 sealer could only be Sun Hai. A level 7 sealer was the top sealer even in the Meru world. Without a doubt, the force that Sun Hai and the others belonged to was definitely a top force in the Meru world. Young Master Nie Tian, it's you guys. Sun Hai was stunned when he saw Nie Tian's group. Then he laughed. Nie Tian nodded slightly, looked at the two supremacies, and said, Mr. Sun, the people you want to capture are the two supremacies of the land of sanguinity, right? Supremacies? Sikon Wuji sneered with an arrogant expression and disdainful eyes. He said, the two of them are merely traders of the sky, Sword Pavilion. Are they worthy of being called supremacies? The cultivators of the underworld are really short-sighted. Martial Uncle Sikon, although these two are small fries of the Sky Sword Pavilion, they are still heavenly evolution realm cultivators. For ants of the underworld like them, aren't they supremacies? As soon as Sikon Wuji finished speaking, Xing Kang's voice rang out. It was very sarcastic, and his face was full of disdain. Humph! Nie Tian let out a cold harumph. With a strange look in his eyes, he shot Xing Kang a cold glance and said, If I'm an ant, and you can't even withstand a single sword strike from me, then who do you think you are? You. Xing Kang's face darkened when he heard Nie Tian's mockery. He roared, Bullsh *T. Who said I can't take one strike from you? That's what he said. Nie Tian pointed at Sikon Wuji and smiled cold. Is he also farting? Sikon Wuji's face darkened slightly. He glared at Xing Kang cold, and the latter's face turned pale. He was so scared that he was about to cry. Xing Kang hurriedly said, Martial Uncle Sikon, I said he was farting, not you. Shut up. Sikon Wuji reprimanded coldly. He then looked at Nie Tian with a cold look. He said coldly, It's true that he can't take one strike from you, but you can't take one strike from me either. Chapter 699. Nie Tianling looked at Sikon Wuji coldly with a hint of provocation in his eyes. He admitted that Sikon Wuji's talent in sword principle was very strong. To be able to step into the sword spirit realm at the age of 20 was indeed amazing. However, in the eyes of Nie Tian, who was at the peak of sword principle in the heaven realm, his talent in sword principle was only amazing. He was not a real, peerless genius. The 5 peak sword principles in the heaven realm basically reached the peak of the sword spirit realm at the age of 20 and comprehended the profound meaning of the sword before the age of 30. As for Sikon Wuji, he was pompous and had just stepped into the sword spirit realm. It was unknown how such an impetuous person could reach the sword spirit realm. The path of sword principle required more tenacity than ordinary martial principles. Sikon Wuji's talent in sword principle was high, but he was too arrogant. This was a fatal flaw for a sword practitioner. It was very likely that he would be stuck in the sword spirit realm for the rest of his life. Sikon Wuji felt the provocation in Nie Tian's eyes. His eyes darkened and a hint of killing intent flashed in them. That's right, it was killing intent. Nie Tian only expressed his dissatisfaction slightly. but Sikon Wuji actually wanted to kill him. This person's arrogance was evident. Sikon Wuji's eyes flickered slightly, and his expression became even more arrogant. He said coldly, "Nietian, I admit that your sword intent is very strong, but it's a pity that you're a martial artist from a lower world, and your sword Dao realm is only sword momentum. So, you can't take my sword." Nietian smiled faintly and did not deny it. Sikon Wuji did not attack directly, which made Nietian feel a little strange. With Sikon Wuji's temperament, he should have attacked without hesitation. Why was he suppressing his emotions? Nietian glanced at Sun Hai and immediately understood. Sikon Wuji was actually afraid of Sun Hai, so he did not attack directly. Sun Hai looked at Sikon Wuji and took a step forward. He said lightly, "Young Master Nietian, my junior brother and disciple are young and impetuous. Please don't take it to heart, young Master Nietian." How could Sun Hai be unable to discern that Sikon Wuji was obviously envious that Nietian's sword insight was stronger than his, and that was why Sikon Wuji was targeting Nietian? "I'm a magnanimous person. Of course I won't take it to heart." Nietian smiled faintly, but there was an indescribable sense of foreboding in his heart. Although Sun Hai was kind, he would not go so far as to apologize. This was not in line with his identity. It seemed that he had something to ask of Nietian. Could it be? Nietian suddenly thought of something. His pupils trembled slightly, and he knew something was wrong. Nirvana Saint Heart. Nietian guessed that Sun Hai must have sensed that the Nirvana Sacred Heart was in his hands, which was why he was so polite. "Young Master Nietian." As expected, Sun Hai smiled again and said, "You have an item on you that belongs to our Sky Sword Pavilion. Could you please hand it over? On behalf of the Sky Sword Pavilion, I cannot thank you enough." Something from the Sky Sword Pavilion? Nietian was stunned for a moment, but he pretended not to know. He smiled and said, "Do I have it on me?" Sikon Wuji's face suddenly darkened, and he said in a deep voice, "Brat, the Nirvana's Sacred Heart is in your hands. It was stolen from the Sky Sword Pavilion by these two traitors. If you hand it over now, you will be a friend of the Sky Sword Pavilion. If you don't, you will be an enemy of the Sky Sword Pavilion." When he said the word enemy, Sikon Wuji's killing intent surged out uncontrollably. If it wasn't for Sun Hai stopping him, he would have already attacked Nietian. Nietian's eyes narrowed slightly. He roughly understood. The two Shuetu masters were traitors of the Sky Sword Pavilion. They stole the Nirvana Sacred Heart and came to the 3,000 small worlds to commit crimes. However, their arrival triggered some kind of restriction in the Land of Bloody Massacre, so they couldn't leave the Land of Bloody Massacre. The people of the Sky Sword Pavilion had sensed their betrayal, so they sent Sun Hai and Sikon Wuji to capture them and bring the Nirvana Sacred Heart back. Of course, the main purpose of the Sky Sword Pavilion was to take back the Nirvana Sacred Heart. Who would have thought that Nietian would also come at this time and obtain the Nirvana Sacred Heart before Sun Hai and the others? The Nirvana Sacred Heart is indeed in my hands. After understanding everything, Nietian let out a strange laugh. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He stared at the two Shuetu masters and said in a cold voice, "These two people are from the Sky Sword Pavilion. They came to the 3,000 small worlds and slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people from the Blood Slaughter Palace. They refined the 5-poison blood infant and killed tens of thousands of babies. A few days ago, they tried to kill hundreds of thousands of people in the Sumi Spirit City. Shouldn't the Sky Sword Pavilion be responsible for these lives?" Sun Hai was stunned for a moment, and his expression turned slightly ugly. Sikon Wuji's reaction was completely the opposite. He was completely infuriated by Nietian's words and shouted sternly, "The people they killed, of course they should be responsible for it. It has nothing to do with the Sky Sword Pavilion." Nietian raised his eyebrows and smiled coldly. "Just now you said that they are from the Sky Sword Pavilion, and now you say that what they did has nothing to do with the Sky Sword Pavilion. Then, my Nirvana's Sacred Heart was obtained from them. Does that mean that it has nothing to do with the Sky Sword Pavilion? You?" Sikon Wuji was extremely angry. There was a lump of stuffy anger in his chest that he couldn't spit out. "Brat, You're twisting words and forcing logic. At this time, Xing Kang's voice sounded. It was directly scolding Nye Tian. However, Nye Tian didn't pay any attention to him. He turned his gaze to Sun Hai and said indifferently, Mr. Sun Hai, I respect you as a rank 7 sealer. Let me ask you, was what I said just now unreasonable? Sun Hai was the only one among the three who was reasonable. Although Nye Tian had obtained the Nirvana Saint Heart, as long as Sky Sword Pavilion was willing to admit their mistake, pay some price, and spare the lives of the two Master Shui too. After he used the Nirvana Saint Heart to save Mo Rushi, there was still a possibility that he could return the item to Sky Sword Pavilion. If Sun Hai also thought that he was being unreasonable, then he definitely wouldn't return the Nirvana Sacred Heart. Sun Hai's expression was extremely ugly. After hesitating for a moment, he said, Young Master Nye Tian, the Sky Sword Pavilion did indeed make some mistakes in this matter. However, the actions of these two people were indeed not the intention of the Sky Sword Pavilion. Don't you think that it's a bit too much to blame the people they killed on the Sky Sword Pavilion? I'm too much. Nye Tian's eyebrows furrowed as his expression flickered. With a cold smile, he said, Sun Hai, why don't you ask those dead people if what I said just now was too much? Those people are all dead. How are we supposed to ask them? Xing Kang took a step forward and shouted arrogantly. Sikong Wuji was even more arrogant. A terrifying sword intent suddenly erupted from his body. His expression became incomparably cold as he said coldly, If they're dead, then they're dead. They're just a bunch of ants in the lower world. It's a waste for them to be alive. The Nirvana Sacred Heart belongs to the Sky Sword Pavilion. Today, you have to hand it over whether you want to or not. Junior brother, seeing that Sikong Wuji was about to make a move, Sun Hai's expression became nervous. He had a good impression of Nye Tian and didn't want Nye Tian to die in the hands of Sikong Wuji. Bullshit. Nye Tian was also completely enraged. He clenched his fists tightly and said in a cold voice, You keep saying the lower world. Could it be that in your eyes, the people of the lower world don't deserve to live? Chapter 700. Sikong Wuji's fierce killing intent seemed to have solidified as he pressed down on Nye Tian. In an instant, Nye Tian felt a sense of suffocation, and he could not help but tremble. First stage heavenly evolution. At that moment, Nye Tian sensed Sikong Wuji's strength. It was at the first stage heavenly evolution. With Sikong Wuji's talent in swordsmanship, even if he was only at the first stage heavenly evolution, the two supremacies of the land of sanguinity would definitely not be his match. Tang Hao, Elder Yi, stepped back. Nye Tian's gaze darkened, and he suddenly became nervous. This was his first time facing a heavenly evolution, and he was not confident at all. He could sense that Sikong Wuji's aura was much stronger than Shadow Ghost's. Just this aura alone was enough to make him feel pressured. Sikong Wuji had been stopped by Sun Hai earlier, so he did not make a move. Now that he had the chance to make a move, he would definitely not show mercy. Sir, Tang Hao cried out in alarm, and his eyes revealed a worried expression. Don't worry about me. Go to Tianluo City. Nye Tian said anxiously. Tang Hao, let's go first. I believe that Mr. Nye will be fine. Elder Yi also said anxiously. The other party was a heavenly evolution from the Sumeru world. Tang Hao and Elder Yi would not be of any help if they stayed behind. Instead, they would become a burden to Nye Tian. Sigh. Tang Hao sighed deeply. He did not stay any longer and left with Elder Yi. The Nirvana Sacred Heart was with Nye Tian, so Sun Hai and Sikong Wuji did not stop them and allowed them to leave. Young Master Nye Tian, I'll give you one more piece of advice. Hand over the Nirvana Sacred Heart, and I guarantee that you will leave alive. Moreover, I'm willing to bring you into the Sumeru world. How about that? Sun Hai stepped forward with a solemn expression and said in a deep voice. After all, he was not a bloodthirsty person, and he still hoped to resolve this peacefully. Mr. Sun, at this point, I'm afraid that even if you're willing to let me go, Sikong Wuji will not. And yet Tianling sneered and released his sword intent. He would fight to the death even if Sikong Wuji was very powerful. Sigh. Young Master Nye Tian, why are you doing this? Sun Hai sighed and retreated. In the void, only Nyetian and Sikon Wuji were left. The two figures faced each other in the air like two sharp swords. The soaring sword intent seemed to have the power to split the sky. Nyetian, since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Sikon Wuji's lips curled into a cold smile. He was indeed jealous of Nyetian. He was jealous that a cultivator from the lower realms could actually condense a sword intent that was even more terrifying than his. So much nonsense. Nye Tianling smirked coldly. His sword will spread hundreds of meters around him, gathering in the air without dispersing, releasing a sharp aura. This sword will take your life. Sikon Wuji's face suddenly darkened as he unsheathed his longsword. A sword cry resounded in the air, and a soaring sword light bloomed in the sky. The sharpness of the sword light was so sharp that it could almost split the heavens and the earth. Seeing this scene, Nyetian's eyes trembled slightly. The sword intent in the air was inexplicably familiar to him. Suddenly, two words appeared in his mind. Xiantian's sword intent. Generally speaking, a swordsman had to go through the initial stages of sword moves, sword techniques, and sword chi. After the sword chi was condensed, the heart of the sword could be developed, and the sword intent could be condensed. However, some people were born as swordsmen and had sword intent in their bodies. These people were called Xiantian swordsmen, and their sword intent was called Xiantian sword intent. Sikon Wuji's sword intent was pure and powerful. Most importantly, he didn't have a heart of the sword, which was the sign of a Xiantian swordsman. Nyetian finally understood why a proud and arrogant person like Sikon Wuji could set foot in the sword spirit realm so early. It was because he was born as a swordsman with sword intent. In other words, in the past 20 years, he had only reached the sword spirit realm from the sword intent realm. Therefore, it wasn't because Sikon Wuji was more talented than others, nor was it because he had better perseverance than others, but because he was luckier than others. Although Xiantian swordsmen were rare, it wasn't something that surprised Nyetian. What surprised him was that Sikon Wuji's sword intent was so familiar. It was actually the limitless sword intent. The limitless sword intent was one of the sword intents that Nyetian was most familiar with in his previous life. This sword intent was created by his best friend, Mo Qianjun. The limitless sword saint, Mo Qianjun, was one of the top 5 sword intents in the heaven realm, just like Nyetian. He was also a good friend of Nyetian in his previous life. Sikon Wuji didn't know what kind of dogshit luck he had, but he actually obtained Mo Qianjun's inheritance. His ancestors must be burning incense. The sword intent of Xiantian swordsmen came from those peerless swordsmen who had comprehended the profound meaning of the sword. After these peerless swordsmen comprehended the profound meaning of the sword, their souls would communicate with the heaven and earth. Invisibly, their sword intent would dissipate between heaven and earth. Under normal circumstances, the sword intent that dissipated between heaven and earth would dissipate, but sometimes it would gather together and not disperse. Following the cycle of heaven and earth, life would be born. Some lucky life forms would obtain the sword intent inheritance by chance. Sikon Wuji was really lucky. He actually obtained the sword intent inheritance of the heaven realm's peak sword intent. This dogshit luck was too big. Unfortunately, heaven and earth would also choose the wrong person. Sikon Wuji was not worthy of the limitless sword intent. Damn, it's actually the limitless sword intent. In the next moment, Nyetian's face suddenly darkened. If it was any other sword intent, he wouldn't be too afraid. However, the limitless sword intent made him feel that it was very troublesome. In his previous life, Nyetian and Mo Qianjun were on par with each other. The two of them had fought several times without a clear winner. The limitless sword intent was on par with Nyetian's proud sword intent. Now that Sikon Wuji had inherited the limitless sword intent, his sword art realm was 1 level higher than Nyetian's, and his strength was almost 1 level higher than Nyetian's. The gap between them was very terrifying. You're afraid. Sikon Wuji noticed the trembling in Nyetian's eyes. He sneered, and his eyes revealed extreme contempt. Afraid? Yeah, Tianling laughed. His eyes flashed, and he said coldly, "It's just Xian Tian's sword intent. I don't know how much of the limitless sword intent you can exert. Make your move. You're courting death." Sikong Wuji's face turned cold. The sword intent in his body instantly condensed, and the seven void sword made a sharp explosion. A huge sword appeared in the air. On the blade of the sword, there was a dazzling flame. The sharpness of the sword was unparalleled. "Junior brother, don't kill." Sun Hai felt the power of Sikong Wuji's sword and screamed, but it was too late. Proud sword art, sword sealing forbidden array. Nie Tian stood proudly in the air. His whole body was surging with sword intent, and his whole body was releasing dripping blood chi. The next moment, in the midst of the blood chi, the surrounding space suddenly tightened, and a strange blood-colored array directly appeared. The sword-sealing forbidden array used blood chi as a guide and the purest sword intent to condense the array. It was even stronger than the 12 heaven slaying sword array. Sword-sealing forbidden array, demon, sword burning the world. Nie Tian was in the array, and his cold voice sounded. He raised his hand, and the terrifying power of the array gathered on the sword edge. The sword light surged hundreds of meters away, and the cold intent was about to burst out. Chapter 701. In the void, Nie Tian stabbed out with his sword, and the endless power of the blood-colored formation surged. The surrounding space of hundreds of meters instantly turned into a blood-colored ocean. The blood-colored sword will surge in the air like stormy waves, sweeping over with great momentum. It's actually a sword formation. When Sun Hai saw the scene in the void, his eyes trembled violently. He did not expect that Nie Tian could actually activate a sword formation, and it was such a terrifying one at that. Feeling the terrifying momentum of Nie Tian's sword, Sikong Wuji's gaze froze for a moment, and then he sneered, "Is it useful?" Rumble. The next moment, there was a violent collision sound in the air. Monstrous waves were set off in the space. The wind and clouds surged, and the sky changed color. Billowing waves of air spread from the center of the collision, and the two figures in the void retreated at high speed. Nie Tian felt a dull impact on his chest, and his whole body was sent flying hundreds of meters away. On the other hand, although Sikong Wuji was also forced to retreat, he only took a few steps back. His body shook, and then he completely stabilized himself. With this move, Sikong Wuji had the absolute upper hand. His strength was much higher than that of Nie Tian, and his realm of swordsmanship was also not comparable to that of Nie Tian. The gap between the two was too big. The wings on Nie Tian's back flapped, and he finally stabilized himself. However, his body shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as a sheet. He had just finished fighting with the Netherworld ghost, and had consumed too much of his Yuanli. His body had reached its limit after fighting head-on with Sikong Wuji's sword. If he had been at his peak at the moment, he might not have been injured by Sikong Wuji's sword. He's not dead. Sikong Wuji's sword made Nie Tian spit out blood. However, there was not joy in his eyes, but shock and confusion. Nie Tian was just a warrior in the 4th tier of the Divine Wheel. How could he not die after taking a direct blow from him? How could this be possible? He's really not dead? In the distance, Xing Kong had a shocked expression on his face as well. His eyes were wide open, and if they were to get any wider, his eyeballs would have popped out. Sikong Wuji was one of the 4 monstrous geniuses of the Sky Sword Pavilion. Even in the entire Shumi world, he was considered a genius. However, he couldn't even kill a cultivator from a lower world with a single strike. If this matter were to spread, Sikong Wuji would probably become a joke in the Shumi world. What a powerful sword formation. Sun Hai, who was at the side, was also shocked, but his reaction was relatively calm. His spiritual power was close to level 80, and he could feel that the sword formation Nie Tian had used just now was extremely powerful, almost no weaker than a level 7 spirit formation. Moreover, there was an abnormally terrifying aura hidden within the spirit formation. Nie Tian's strength was probably not enough, and he had not displayed the true power of the sword formation. How could a martial artist from a lower world grasp such a terrifying sword array? A thought emerged in Sun Hai's mind. Nie Tian's identity is not simple. Tang Hao and Yi Linyun, who were by Nie Tian's side, were definitely the peak experts of the 3,000 small worlds. However, they were very respectful in front of Nie Tian, which was very strange. Moreover, the sword formation that Nie Tian was using now made Sun Hai even more suspicious. He even suspected that Nie Tian was not from the 3,000 small worlds. However, this was nothing. Just now, when Nie Tian slashed down with his sword, Sun Hai felt an abnormally terrifying power from his body, as if there was something terrible hidden in the latter's body. Nie Tian, who are you? Sun Hai frowned slightly, and his eyes could not help but tremble. Nie Tian took a step forward, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and raised the corner of his mouth into a mocking smile. Sikong Wuji, your sword is only so. This sentence was obviously mocking Sikong Wuji, saying that Nie Tian could not take his sword. This caused Sikong Wuji's expression to become abnormally ugly. Nie Tian, you're courting death. Sikong Wuji was extremely angry, and he roared viciously. The sword intent in his body became even more violent, and he stabbed out again. The sword intent was shocking, and the mighty sword intent whistled over. A huge force forcefully pressed down on Nie Tian, swift and fierce. Nie Tian felt the pressure on his face. His eyes narrowed slightly, and he flapped his wings and quickly retreated. However, Sikong Wuji's strength was too strong. Even if Nie Tian's figure was extremely fast, he was still hit by the huge force. His body swayed in the void, and he spat out a mouthful of blood again. Nie Tian's figure retreated dozens of meters again, and his face became even paler, as if he could fall at any time. Nie Tian, let's see how long you can last. Sikong Wuji roared fiercely, and his eyes were incomparably stern. It seemed that he had made up his mind to kill Nie Tian. At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt a strange force surging out. He frowned, and his eyes immediately fell on the spiritual dragon ring on his hand. That force was coming from the spiritual dragon ring. The spiritual dragon ring was the ring that the former president of the Alchemists Guild, Hui Yuan, gave to Nie Tian before his death. When Nie Tian left the chaotic abyss, Queen Medusa gave him a little emerald dragon. That little emerald dragon fused with the spiritual dragon ring, and it also unlocked the powerful seal in the spiritual dragon ring, the spiritual dragon seal. Nie Tian observed carefully, and when he saw his blood inadvertently soaking into the spiritual dragon ring, he actually had a very real feeling about the spiritual dragon seal in the spiritual dragon ring, as if the spiritual dragon seal was in his body. Why didn't I have this feeling when I sprinkled my blood on the spiritual dragon ring before? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and his brows furrowed. Perhaps the blood had to be thick enough to activate the power of the spiritual dragon ring. What the hell is that? Sikong Wuji also sensed a strange force surging out of Nie Tian's body, which made him feel inexplicable fear. At this moment, the spiritual dragon ring suddenly flashed, and a little emerald dragon flew out. Its whole body was green, and it looked lifelike. It was the little emerald dragon, but at this moment, its body had become a lot bigger, and it was already 5 or 6 meters long. The little emerald dragon was completely solid, and it was no different from a real divine dragon, except that its body was a little smaller. The emerald dragon floated in the air. It circled around Nie Tian. Suddenly, endless dragon chi gushed out, directly dispersing Sikong Wuji's oppressive sword intent. Phew! Nie Tian let out a long breath, and his eyes slightly trembled. He felt a strong sealing power from the emerald dragon. It seemed that the emerald dragon had absorbed a lot of the spiritual dragon seal's power in the spiritual dragon ring, and even its body had become bigger. This is... Seeing the little emerald dragon beside Nie Tian, Sun Hai and the others were shocked, and their necks straightened. In the next moment, Sun Hai noticed the spiritual dragon ring on Nie Tian's hand. His eyes suddenly trembled, and he couldn't help but cry out, "Dragon ring, You are from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. It really is a dragon ring. Sikong Wuji also noticed the spiritual dragon ring on Nietian's hand. His heart violently trembled, and his eyes became blurred. 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss? Hearing the name mentioned by Sun Hai, Nietian's eyes slightly narrowed. He didn't know what kind of organization it was, and it was the first time he heard of it. He had obtained the spiritual dragon ring from Hui Yuan, but before he could ask him where he got the spiritual dragon ring, the latter passed away. Chapter 702. Nietian frowned slightly. It sounded like the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss was a terrifying organization. Otherwise, Sun Hai and the others wouldn't be so surprised. Nietian, you really aren't from the 3,000 small worlds? After a long while, Sun Hai finally calmed down, and fear could be seen in his eyes as he looked at Nietian. Since Nietian had the dragon ring, Sun Hai was sure that he was from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. Teacher, this kid has a powerful background. Xing Kong walked to Sun Hai's side. His face was pale, and his voice was trembling. He was obviously frightened. Sun Hai's face turned serious. If Nietian was from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss, then he wouldn't be able to get the Nirvana Sacred Heart back. Sikong Wuji was stunned. He thought that Nietian was just a person from the lower world. He didn't expect Nietian's identity to be even more terrifying than his. Nietian was also stunned. Looking at the reactions of Sun Hai and the others, the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss was indeed terrifying. They were so afraid of it. Sun Hai was already a rank 7 sealer. Sky Sword Pavilion was definitely one of the top forces in the Sumeru world. However, they were afraid of the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. So what if he's from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss? Suddenly, Sikong Wuji's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. Killing intent surged from his body, and he roared, "I'll kill you all the same." As he roared, Sikong Wuji moved. His body seemed to have turned into a sharp sword as he dashed towards Nietian. "Sikong Wuji, you're crazy." Sun Hai was stunned and roared. If Sikong Wuji killed someone from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss, it would bring disaster to Sky Sword Pavilion. However, it was too late. Sikong Wuji's figure had already dashed out. Sun Hai couldn't stop him. Nietian was taken aback. He hadn't expected that Sikong Wuji would dare to attack him. As a thought entered his mind, the green dragon's body shook, and an illusory dragon flew out of it, charging towards Sikong Wuji. Limitless sword. Sikong Wuji let out a deep roar, and his figure turned into a ray of light. The brilliance of his sword blossomed in the sky, and a sharp aura surged forth with a murderous intent. Roar! In the void, the shadow of the dragon roared. It raised its head to the sky and roared, releasing unrestrained dragon energy. Boom! A loud sound rang out as Sikong Wuji's sword struck the dragon shadow. His figure suddenly became sluggish, unable to advance any further. He frowned. He didn't expect the green dragon's power to be so terrifying. Sun Hai and Xing Kong were also stunned. That seemingly ordinary dragon shadow was actually able to block Sikong Wuji's strongest sword. This was too inconceivable. Good chance. At this moment, Nietian seized the opportunity and arrived above Sikong Wuji's head. He sneered and slashed down with his sword. Nietian immediately used his strongest move, Weeping Blood Soul Slash. A blood-colored sword image slashed down towards Sikong Wuji with extreme killing intent. Since Sikong Wuji wanted his life, there was no need for Nietian to hold back. Oh no! Sikong Wuji felt the pressure above his head. He raised his head and his eyes trembled violently. Bang! In the next moment, the blood-colored sword image slashed down and Sikong Wuji fell down like a meteor. Junior brother. Seeing this, Sun Hai roared angrily and swooped down towards the falling figure. Nietian squinted his eyes and saw that the body of the little green dragon in the sky had shrunk again. It was now only 1 meter long. He immediately understood that the dragon shadow was released by the green dragon after it absorbed the spiritual dragon seal's power. When the power of the seal was exhausted, the green dragon's body had shrunk. Little guy, Hurry up and return to the spiritual dragon ring to absorb the power of the seal. The corner of Nietion's mouth rose slightly. The little green dragon circled around and returned to the spiritual dragon ring. Every time the green dragon's power was used, it had to return to the spiritual dragon ring to absorb the power of the seal. This made Nietion a little distressed. He had obtained the spiritual dragon ring for more than a month, and the green dragon had only absorbed a little bit of power. It seemed that he had to find a way to increase the speed at which the green dragon absorbed the power of the seal in the future. With the spiritual dragon ring, Nietion had another trump card. This trump card couldn't be used casually and could only be used when he encountered a very powerful enemy. Nietion didn't care about Sun Hai and Sikong Wuji. He raised his eyebrows and fixed his eyes on Xing Kong and the two supremacies beside him. With a flash, Nietion came to Xing Kang's side. What do you want? Xing Kong could feel the killing intent in Nietion's eyes. His face turned pale and his tongue began to spin. Sikong Wuji had said that he couldn't even take a single strike from Nietion. Just now, when he saw Nietion's strength with his own eyes, he was even more terrified. Scram! Nietion glared at Xing Kong and spat out a word coldly. Xing Kong gulped and ran away in fear. Nietion didn't care about Xing Kong. His cold eyes were fixed on the two supremacies of the land of blood slaughter. The tragedy of the blood slaughter palace and the 5-poison blood infant was caused by these two. How could Nietion let them go? We are from Sky Sword Pavilion. You can't kill us. The two supremacies' Yuan veins were sealed, and they were no different from trash. In front of Nietion, they didn't have the slightest ability to fight back. When they felt the killing intent in Nietion's eyes, sweat appeared on their foreheads. The corner of Nietion's mouth rose into a cold smile. He said indifferently, Sun Hai only captured you, but didn't kill you. It seems that the two of you have a high status in Sky Sword Pavilion. These two stole the Nirvana Sacred Heart and betrayed Sky Sword Pavilion. However, Sun Hai only sealed their strength and didn't kill them. This meant that they had some background. Yes. The eyes of one of them flashed as if he saw a glimmer of hope. He nodded frantically and said, We are the sons of the Vice Pavilion Master of Sky Sword Pavilion. You can't kill us. Otherwise, my father definitely won't let you go. Really? Nietion Tianling smiled coldly. So these two were the sons of the Vice Pavilion Master of Sky Sword Pavilion. No wonder Sun Hai didn't dare to kill them directly. Nietion guessed that once these two were brought back to Sky Sword Pavilion, they would at most be locked up. After a while, they might be released again. These two fellows had committed grave crimes. Nietion obviously wouldn't let them go like this. Since you've come to the 3,000 little worlds, then leave your lives here. Nietion raised his eyebrows. His expression instantly turned cold, and two sword shadows shot out. Whoosh! Whoosh! Two bloody lights appeared in the air. Two heads fell to the ground. Before they died, their eyes were still filled with disbelief. They never dreamed that they would lose their lives on this trip to the 3,000 little worlds. Furthermore, they died in such a sullen manner at the hands of a cultivator from the 3,000 little worlds. You killed them? Xing Kong was dumbfounded. Even Sun Hai didn't dare to touch the lives of these two people. Yet, Nietion actually killed them just like that? They're just two scum. So what if I killed them? Is there need to be so surprised? Nietion smiled indifferently. He looked at Xing Kong with deep disdain. At this time, Sun Hai's figure appeared again. In his arms was Sikong Wuji, who was already unconscious. Chapter 703. N. Nietion turned around to look at Sun Hai and nodded. He did not look panicked at all. Nietion used his divine sense to check on Sikong Wuji. He was still breathing, but he was unconscious. This guy was really lucky. He did not die. Sun Hai's face suddenly became gloomy. He stared at Nietion and suppressed the terrifying anger in his heart. Those two were the sons of the Vice Pavilion Master. Even he did not dare to kill them. Now that they were killed by Nietion, how could he explain this to the Vice Pavilion Master when he returned? Nietion felt Sun Hai's anger, but there was no fear on his face. Instead, he asked calmly, Do you want to kill me? Master, he killed people from Sky Sword Pavilion and injured martial uncle Sikon. You must kill him. Before Sun Hai could speak, Xing Kong, who was at the side, said emotionally. Nie Tianling looked at Xing Kong coldly. The latter was so scared that he immediately hid behind Sun Hai. Shut up. Sun Hai glared at Xing Kong fiercely. Then he looked at Nie Tian and said word by word, Nie Tian, are you from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss? If I said no, would you believe me? Nie Tian smiled and asked back. No, Sun Hai replied cold. He had already determined that Nie Tian was from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. Moreover, he could not kill Nie Tian. Even if he brought Nie Tian's head back, the Vice Pavilion Master would not let it go. Therefore, if Nie Tian wanted to resolve this matter, he would have to go to the Heavenly Sword Pavilion himself and explain it to the Vice Sect Master. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He paused and said directly, I have no relationship with the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. I obtained the Spirit Dragon Ring by accident. I also want to know what kind of organization the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss is. You're lying. Xing Kong roared again. If you're not from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss, how can you use the power of the Dragon Ring? Only the owner of the Dragon Ring can use the power of the Dragon Ring. You are clearly the owner of the Dragon Ring. You are from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. Sun Hai frowned as if he was thinking about something. Nie Tian shook his head and smiled. He looked at Sun Hai and said, Sun Hai, do you think so too? Sun Hai raised his head and said with a calm expression, Nie Tian, I don't care if you're from the abyss of 10,000 demons or not. You have to come back to the Heaven Sword Pavilion with me. I have to go back with you. Nie Tian went blank for a moment before his face grew cold. What if I don't want to? You Tian Hai, Tian Hai, Tian Hai, Tian Hai I have. It was obvious that he was determined to take Nie Tian back, even if he had to use force. Nie Tian shook his head slightly and said coldly, Sun Hai, you're a 7th grade sealer, but your battle prowess might not be higher than Sikon Wuji's. If we were to have a life-and-death battle, it's hard to say who would win. Nie Tian shook his head. Sun Hai, you're a rank 7 sealer, but you might not be stronger than Sikon Wuji. Nie Tian was right. Sun Hai was a level 7 sealer who specialized in the Tao of sealing. His current strength was also at the first level of Heaven Evolution, and his true battle prowess was below Sikon Wuji's. Sun Hai was not a match for Sikon Wuji. Nie Tian was right. Sun Hai was a rank 7 sealer. Since you know I am a rank 7 sealer, aren't you afraid that I will seal your Yuan Meridian? Sun Hai smirked. A terrifying sealing light appeared behind him. Since you know that I'm a rank 7 sealer, aren't you afraid that I'll directly seal your Yuan Meridian? The corners of Sun Hai's mouth curled up in a strange manner, and a beam of sealing light appeared behind him. With Sun Hai's sealing abilities, he could instantly seal a Heaven Evolution realm martial artist if he was given the slightest chance. Sun Hai was stunned. He scanned Nie Tian with his divine sense. His expression froze, and he was speechless. Sun Hai went blank for a moment before he scanned Nie Tian with his divine sense. His expression instantly stiffened, and he couldn't utter a word. Teacher, what's wrong? Xing Kong could not help but ask when he saw Sun Hai's expression. Sun Hai reacted after more than 10 seconds. Your meridian is a dragon meridian. He had scanned Nie Tian with his divine sense, and was shocked to find that his meridian was different from ordinary cultivators. It was a dragon-shaped meridian. The dragon-shaped meridian was filled with the power of thunder. It cannot be sealed. Sun Hai would lose his greatest advantage if he could not seal Nie Tian's meridian. He could not fight with Nie Tian. Nie Tian smiled. He knew how terrifying a 9-star dragon meridian was. Even a rank 9 sealer could not seal a 9-star dragon meridian, let alone a rank 7 sealer. A 9-star dragon meridian was comparable to a heavenly spirit body. The dragon meridian was powerful beyond imagination. It cannot be sealed so easily. Sun Hai, Nie Tian's lips curled into a strange smile. He took a step forward and said, I know you are an honest person. I don't want to make things difficult for you. Those two were killed by me, Sikon Wuji was injured by me, and the Nirvana Sacred Heart is also in my hands. but I have something important to do and cannot leave the 3,000 small worlds. But I can promise you that I will go to the Sumru world and visit Sky Sword Pavilion. When? Sun Hai's eyes flickered and he asked urgently. 1 month if I'm fast, 3 months if I'm slow. Nye Tian nodded. I'll wait for you. Sun Hai thought for a moment and said, I'll stay by your side during this period of time. 3 months later, we'll return to Sky Sword Pavilion together. Nye Tian looked at Sun Hai's solemn expression and could not help but smile bitterly. It seemed that Sun Hai still did not believe him. Sun Hai turned around and handed Sikong Wuji to Xing Kong. He said, Xing Kong, you and Wuji return to Sky Sword Pavilion first. 3 months later, I will return with young Master Nye Tian. Teacher, this... Xing Kang's expression was awkward. If he brought the injured Sikong Wuji back, he would be scolded to death by the Vice Pavilion Master and the others. You can push all the blame to me. The Vice Pavilion Master will not make things difficult for you. Sun Hai said in a deep voice. Before Xing Kong could speak, a scroll appeared in his hand, and he opened it. Immediately, the scroll released a strong white light. In an instant, countless rays of light surged, and the space within 10 meters was fixed. Space-time teleportation scroll. Nye Tian felt a powerful force, and his expression changed slightly. There was a plain gap between the 3,000 small worlds and the Sumru world. If one wanted to cross the plain gap, they had to use a space-time teleportation scroll or a space-time barrier. The plain gap between the lower plane and the middle plane was not big. A rank 5 space-time teleportation scroll could transfer planes. However, space-time attribute spiritual array masters were extremely rare, so space-time teleportation scrolls were very precious. Nye Tian had been in the 3,000 small worlds for a long time, but he had only seen one space-time attribute spiritual array master, and that was Yao Feek. However, with Yao Feek's attainments in spiritual array, it was impossible for him to create a rank 5 space-time teleportation scroll. Moreover, space-time teleportation was a very dangerous thing, especially the transfer between planes. If one was not careful, they could fall into a space-time crack and be torn apart by a space-time storm. Therefore, under normal circumstances, very few people would transfer planes. Martial artists from the lower planes had no chance to go to the middle planes, and martial artists from the middle planes looked down on the lower planes. Why would they come to the lower planes? A moment later, the teleportation spiritual array was formed. Xing Kang's expression was ugly, but he still stepped out and entered the teleportation spiritual array. Chapter 704. After Sikong Wuji and Xing Kong left, Sun Hai's gaze immediately fell on Nye Tian. He squeezed out a smile and said, Young Master Nye Tian, if you have anything to do, please go now. Nye Tian smiled speechlessly. Sun Hai's words made it sound like he was making arrangements for his funeral. In fact, from Sun Hai's point of view, as long as Nye Tian returned to Sky Sword Pavilion with him, there would only be one outcome: death. The Vice Pavilion Master was a cruel and merciless man who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Nye Tian had killed his 2 sons, so there was no way he would let Nye Tian live. All right, let's go. The 2 supremacies and 6 supremacies of the land of Bloody Massacre were all killed. The remaining people were just small fries. There was no point in staying here anymore. After returning, Tang Hao would send people to take over the land of Bloody Massacre. Nye Tian was worried about Mo Rushi, so he didn't stay any longer and immediately returned to Heaven Luo City. 3 days later, Nye Tian and Sun Hai's figures appeared in the sky above Heaven Luo Mountain. As soon as the 2 figures appeared, Tian Luo Mountain rumbled and shook violently. Waves of dust rose from the ground, and then an enormous figure charged out. The enormous figure was extremely familiar. It was the ancient dragon soul, Di Shi. Good brother, you're finally back. Di Shi's voice was vast and boundless, and the entire void trembled. This is... Sun Hai saw Di Shi's figure, and his face turned pale. He couldn't stay calm anymore. If he was not mistaken, what appeared in front of him should be the soul of an ancient divine dragon. Its aura was so powerful. Although it was only in its soul form, the pressure from its aura was stronger than that of a high-level heavenly evolution realm warrior. A third-rate city in one of the 3,000 small worlds actually hid an ancient dragon lake. This was just too shocking. This is my sworn brother. Nyetian smiled faintly and moved to Dishi's side. Being able to surprise Sun Hai like this, Nyetian felt slightly proud. Sworn brother? Sun Hai gulped. His figure swayed, and he almost fell down. A human martial artist had become sworn brothers with an ancient dragon soul. When had the 3,000 small worlds become so crazy? At this time, Sun Hai had a higher opinion of Nyetian. He was also glad that he did not kill Nyetian. Otherwise, if this dragon soul had a chance to recover its physical body, it would tear the entire Sumeru world apart. This human is quite powerful. Is he your friend? Dishi's eyes, which were as bright as the sun and the moon, landed on Sun Hai. The latter immediately felt a strong pressure, almost suffocating him. Even though he was a heavenly evolution realm martial artist from the Sumeru world, he could not withstand the oppressive aura of the dragon soul. Big brother, he's my friend. Nyetian intended to use Dishi to intimidate Sun Hai. Since he had achieved his goal, he smiled faintly and reminded Dishi not to go overboard. Sir Dragon God, I'm a friend of Sir Nyetian. Sun Hai felt the pressure lessen slightly. He bowed deeply and said respectfully, in front of the ancient dragon soul, even Sun Hai had to lower his head. Dishi's huge dragon body rolled, and his dragon head shook. He directly lifted Nyetian up, and his body moved, rushing up to the sky. Mr. Sun Hai, you enter the city first. I'll be there shortly, Nyetian shouted. He had already followed Dishi to the top of the clouds. Sun Hai watched the man and the dragon disappear into the clouds. His face was as pale as a sheet, and the shock in his heart was written on his face. He never thought that Nyetian's identity would be so complicated. He had an ancient dragon soul by his side. In this way, things seemed to have become more complicated. Sun Hai's face revealed an unconcealable look of worry. He sighed softly, and his figure moved, entering Tianluo City. Above the clouds, Nyetian sat on Dishi's dragon head. He was slightly stunned and asked in confusion, Big brother Dishi, you seem to have something to say to me. Dishi brought Nyetian tens of thousands of meters up in the sky. Obviously, he wanted to avoid everyone. Good brother, that guy's not weak. He seems to be a sealing master. He shouldn't be from the lower world, right? Dishi's dragon beard danced in the air, and his voice was deep and mighty. However, it only reached Nyetian's ears. He's from the middle world. Since Dishi could tell, Nyetian told him what happened in the land of bloody massacre. It's like this. After listening, Dishi said solemnly, So, you're saying that you'll be in danger if you return to Sky Sword Pavilion with him? Not necessarily, because I have this. Nyetian smiled faintly and took out the Spirit Dragon Ring. He didn't say anything about the Spirit Dragon Ring earlier. Now, he said, this ring is called the Spirit Dragon Ring. There's a powerful seal inside. Sun Hai and the others said that this ring came from an organization called the 10,000 Demon Dragon Abyss. Sky Sword Pavilion is very afraid of this organization. Sun Hai believes that I'm from the 10,000 Demon Dragon Abyss. Big brother Dishi, take a look. Is this ring related to the Dragon Spring vein you mentioned? The moment Dishi saw the Spirit Dragon Ring, his huge eyes slightly stiffened. He was very surprised. Then, he used his divine sense to explore the inside of the Spirit Dragon Ring, and his expression became even more shocked. Seeing Dishi's reaction, Nyetian couldn't help but frown. After a long time, Dishi slowly reacted and said, I did sense an aura from the Spirit Dragon Ring. It's very similar to the Dragon Spring vein, but a little different. There's a powerful seal inside the Spirit Dragon Ring. I've never seen a seal like this before, but I can feel that there's a powerful dragon soul imprisoned inside. There's a dragon soul imprisoned inside the Spirit Dragon Ring. Nyetian was stunned, and his face was filled with shock. The Spirit Dragon Seal was extremely powerful, even more powerful than Jean de Bao's 3,000 demon and deity seals and the 9 Serenities Demon Emperor's demonic devouring heaven seal. What kind of dragon soul was it? It was so powerful that it needed the Spirit Dragon Seal to imprison it. Big brother Shi, is the dragon soul in the spirit dragon seal stronger than you? Nietian paused for a moment and asked in horror. Shi's waving dragon beard stopped for a moment, and then his expression became shocked. He nodded heavily and said, "It's stronger than me." This. Nietian's expression froze, and he said in shock, "How is that possible?" Shi was the most powerful golden dragon from the divine dragon clan, and he was also the war god of the golden dragon clan. If the dragon soul in the spirit dragon seal was stronger than him, it undoubtedly meant that this imprisoned dragon soul was stronger than Shi when it was alive. Did a divine dragon that was stronger than the war god of the golden dragon clan exist? The answer was yes, but there was only one, and that was the dragon emperor of the golden dragon clan. Only the dragon emperor of the golden dragon clan was stronger than Shi. Could it be that the dragon soul imprisoned in the spirit dragon seal was the dragon emperor of the golden dragon clan? Thinking of this, Nietian's eyes became dull. Roar! This is impossible. At the same time, Shi thought of something as well, and his enormous body shook abruptly as he roared furiously and shook the heavens and the earth. Shi suddenly burst into rage, and his enormous body charged into the sky. The dark clouds and the surroundings surged, and the heavens and the earth changed color. Even space became distorted. Chapter 705. In the clouds, the dragon soul was furious. Dragon chi surged, and the space shook violently. Nietian couldn't stop Shi, so he could only watch helplessly from the side. His big brother, the dragon clan, was good, but he was easily angered. After a long time, Shi finally calmed down. He looked at the spiritual dragon ring on Nietian's hand, and the dragon chi in his eyes became slightly moist. Nietian shook his head slightly and said in a deep voice, "Brother Shi, we can't be sure that the dragon soul sealed in the spiritual dragon ring is the dragon emperor. Don't be too sad. Even if the dragon soul is really the dragon emperor, it may not be a bad thing. At least it means that the dragon emperor is still alive." Nietian roughly knew how the dragon clan was destroyed, so he really couldn't believe that the dragon soul sealed in the spiritual dragon ring was the dragon emperor. But no one knew what happened to the dragon clan back then, so anything was possible. Shi calmed down a lot and asked in a serious voice, "Brother Nietian, where did you get the spiritual dragon ring?" Nietian didn't hide anything and told him the truth. But he suddenly remembered that since Sun Hai identified him as a member of the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss based on the spiritual dragon ring on his hand, didn't it mean that everyone in the Abyss had a dragon ring? And if every dragon ring had a spiritual dragon seal, and every spiritual dragon seal imprisoned a dragon soul, then did it mean that all the dragon clan were imprisoned in the dragon ring? Thinking of this, Nietian's face turned pale. Just who was it that had the ability to seal all of the dragon clan in a ring? The more Nietian thought about it, the more likely it was, but he didn't dare to tell Shi about it. Otherwise, the latter would make trouble again. Shi couldn't figure out what was going on. He once again sent his divine sense into the spiritual dragon ring, trying to sense the aura in the spiritual dragon seal. But after spending more than half a day, he still couldn't break the seal, so he had to give up. Seeing that Shi was very disappointed, Nietian said, "Brother Shi, don't worry. Since I promised to find the dragon spring vein for you, I will definitely do it. Now, I promise you that I will definitely unravel the secret within the dragon ring. I will also investigate the destruction of the dragon clan for you." Good brother. With your words, big brother can rest assured. Shi was extremely moved. His dragon eyes that were like the sun and moon flickered with a strange light. After comforting Shi, Nietian did not stay any longer. He let Shi return to the ground and entered Heaven Luo City. The city lord is back. As soon as Nietian's figure appeared at the city gate, he heard the cheers of the entire city. The news of him winning first place in the Shumi Martial meet had long since spread. Now that he had returned to Heaven Luo City, it was definitely a glorious return. Just now, his and Shi's figures had already alarmed the entire Heaven Luo City, and even the people from the nearby cities had rushed over, wanting to catch a glimpse of him. Tian looked at the boiling crowd and shook his head speechlessly. He really didn't want to cause such a big commotion. City Lord, you're back. At this time, a familiar figure appeared. It was the guard commander of Heaven Luo City, Gao Han. Tian greeted Gao Han, and under the escort of a group of guards, he majestically entered the city. The crowd was about to go crazy, and many people shouted excitedly. City Lord is so young. He is indeed a young hero. City Lord is so handsome. I want to give birth to a monkey for him. City Lord, please slow down. We haven't seen enough yet. The journey of thousands of meters took more than half an hour. When Tian arrived at the City Lord's mansion, his entire body was covered in sweat. This journey was more arduous than a great battle. Finally entering the City Lord's mansion, Tian let out a long breath of turbid air. The crowd crowded at the entrance of the City Lord's mansion and only dispersed after a long time. Tian laughed bitterly and said self-deprecatingly, "It turns out that it's not easy to be a hero. If it was Mou, he would definitely like this kind of scene, but Tian didn't care at all. The reason why he didn't fly back directly was because he didn't want the people of Heaven Luo City to think that he was too cold. Sun Hai had already been waiting in the City Lord's mansion. Looking at Tian from afar, he said in his heart, "Tian, you clearly don't like this kind of scene, but you still insisted on coming here just to make those people feel a little more comfortable? What kind of person are you?" "Mr. Sun Hai, I've kept you waiting." Tian also saw Sun Hai, smiled faintly, and walked over. At this time, Tang Hao, Elder Yi, and the others also appeared. They had returned to Heaven Luo City not long ago and had been waiting for Tian to return. Tian hurriedly greeted everyone and went straight to find Mo Rushi. After a while, Tian came to Mo Rushi's room and looked at the beautiful girl lying quietly on the bed. The corner of his mouth slightly raised, and he said faintly, "Rushi, I'm back." Tian stepped forward and checked Mo Rushi's state. Everything was normal. He no longer hesitated and directly took out the Nirvana Sacred Heart. The Nirvana Sacred Heart was the 8th demonic fire on the demonic fire list. It was very strange. It did not have any destructive power, but it had an extremely strong vitality. When the Nirvana Sacred Heart appeared, scarlet flames filled the entire room, but they did not have any burning power. Instead, they made people feel extremely exuberant vitality. Since I have already offended the Sky Soar Pavilion, there is no need to return this Nirvana Sacred Heart to them. Tian murmured as he held the strange green liquid fire in his palm. He planned to let Mo Rushi directly fuse with the Nirvana Sacred Heart. Generally speaking, fusing with demonic fire was extremely dangerous. Many martial artists had their souls destroyed in order to fuse with demonic fire. However, the Nirvana Sacred Heart did not have any destructive power. Even if the fusion failed, it would not be life-threatening. As long as she could fuse with the Nirvana Sacred Heart, Mo Rushi would not only wake up, but her strength would also increase greatly. Her martial body would also become extremely powerful, and she would almost have an immortal body. Tian felt the vitality in the space, and all the pores on his body opened up. There was an indescribable feeling of comfort. It was not easy to fuse with the Nirvana Sacred Heart. It had high requirements for a martial artist's Yuan spirit, Yuan meridian, and martial body. Otherwise, the two supremes from the land of bloody massacre would have fused with the Nirvana Sacred Heart long ago. Mo Rushi had the phoenix soul in her body, and her Yuan spirit was the Nine Heavens Divine Phoenix, a supreme being's Yuan spirit. There was a high chance of success in fusing with the Nirvana Sacred Heart. With this thought, Tian no longer hesitated. He raised his palms slightly and controlled the Nirvana Sacred Heart to move slowly. The Nirvana Sacred Heart floated above Mo Rushi's body. Tian's body surged with gentle Yuan Qi and poured it into the Nirvana Sacred Heart. Boom! The Nirvana Sacred Heart was stimulated by the Yuan Qi, and it immediately released surging flames. The vitality in the room became even denser. Slowly, thin green flames were released from the green liquid fire. That was the purest form of life energy. A moment later, Mo Rushi's body was wrapped in green flames, looking holy and dignified. I must succeed. Nietion's heart beat wildly. The next step was the most crucial one. He had to control the green flames and pour them into Mo Rushi's body. If he succeeded, it would mean that Mo Rushi's body could fuse with the Nirvana sacred heart. At this moment, Nietion's heart jumped to his throat. Under his scorching gaze, the thin green flame slowly came into contact with Mo Rushi's body. Chapter 706. Heaven Luo City, Lord's Mansion. Everyone was waiting anxiously outside the room. Nietion had been in the room for a few hours already. There was a strong life aura coming from the room, but Nietion had not come out yet. Tang Hao, Mr. Nye hasn't come out for a long time. Could something have happened? Elder Yi asked with a frown. Tang Hao's frown deepened. He did not know what had happened in the room and could only shake his head helplessly. Rushi, don't let anything happen to them. You must not let anything happen to them. Emotai paced back and forth anxiously. Don't worry, they'll be fine. Suddenly, Sun Hai's voice was heard. He had a complicated expression on his face. His mental power was very strong. Even though he was not in the room, he could sense what was happening in the room. He knew that Nietion was helping Mo Rushi fuse with the Nirvana Sacred Heart. The Nirvana Sacred Heart, the 8th demonic fire, and a rare treasure of the world. Nietion actually fused it with a girl. This girl was very important to him. For some reason, Sun Hai did not stop Nietion. Perhaps he knew that even if he did not agree, Nietion would still do it. But this way, if Nietion went to Sky Sword Pavilion, he might really lose his life. The Nirvana Sacred Heart was one of the 3 sacred treasures of Sky Sword Pavilion. If Nietion fused with Mo Rushi, then even if he was from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss, Sky Sword Pavilion would not let him go. Sigh. Sun Hai could not help but sigh. Unknowingly, he was actually worried for Nietion. After a while, the room door opened and Nietion walked out. His face was as pale as paper, but there was a gratified smile on the corner of his mouth. Mo Rushi had successfully fused with the Nirvana Sacred Heart. Nietion, how are you? Is Rushi awake? Is she all right? Emotai saw Nietion come out and asked anxiously. Nietion smiled indifferently and said, I'm fine. Rushi is already normal. She will wake up in 3 days. Mo Rushi's vital signs had recovered, but she needed some time to adapt to the Nirvana Sacred Heart, so she would only wake up in a few days. I'll go and see her. Emotai's face was filled with excitement as he quickly entered the room. Nietion took a deep breath and swallowed a foundation fortifying pill. Only then did his complexion improve slightly. Sun Hai glanced at Nietion. He wanted to say something, but he swallowed his words. Everyone quickly arrived at the main hall of the City Lord Manor. Nietion told Tang Hao about what happened in the land of Bloody Massacre, and Tang Hao memorized everything. Next, Nietion's gaze landed on Sun Hai, and he asked, Mr. Sun Hai, you've already sensed the existence of a powerful restriction in the land of Blood Massacre. I want to know where this restriction came from. There were restrictions in the land of bloody slaughter. So Supremacy Shui Tu, and the others couldn't leave the land of bloody slaughter. The 6 supremacies must have used some kind of secret technique to leave the land of bloody slaughter by borrowing the Nether Ghost body. In the past, there were no restrictions in the land of bloody slaughter. This restriction should have appeared after Supremacy Shui Tu and the others arrived. Sun Hai's gaze sank slightly. After thinking for a while, he said, Young Master Nietion, the Supremacy Shui Tu you mentioned is called Mu Su. The other supremacy is his younger brother, Mu Lei. These 2 are the guards guarding the Nirvana Sacred Heart in Sky Sword Pavilion. 20 years ago, the 2 of them stole the Nirvana Sacred Heart and disappeared. We searched everywhere before confirming that they came to the 3,000 Lesser Worlds. The restriction in the land of bloody slaughter was actually set up by the Sky Sword ancestor to protect the Nirvana Sacred Heart. When Mu Su and the other Supremacy Shui Tu came to the land of bloody slaughter, the restriction expanded and spread across the entire land of bloody slaughter, forming the blood slaughter restriction. Nietion nodded slightly. So that's how it was. Musu and the others touched the restriction, and their bodies were also affected by the power of the restriction. Therefore, they couldn't leave the land of bloody slaughter. This could be considered a great fortune in misfortune. If Musu and the others could leave the land of bloody slaughter, the entire 3,000 lesser worlds would probably suffer a catastrophe. Now, the Nirvana's Sacred Heart was gone, but the restriction was still there. However, this restriction didn't have any effect on other people. At this time, Nietion took out the Essence Chi Earth Vein map. He was prepared to rest for a few days before going to Hungwan Heaven to find the location of the Essence Chi Earth Vein. The Essence Chi Earth Vein was a naturally formed heaven and earth spirit array. It contained abundant heaven and earth spirit energy. If he could find it, Nietion could make use of the terrain of the earth vein to open a spirit-absorbing great array and absorb all the spirit artifacts in the earth vein into the spirit array. At that time, the martial artists who cultivated in the spirit array would have at least a few hundred times better results than outside. Essence Chi Earth Vein Map. Sun Hai saw the item in Nietion's hand and cried out involuntarily. Nietion's eyes narrowed. The Essence Chi Earth Vein Map was very rare, but it wasn't enough to make Sun Hai lose his composure. The latter was a Tier 7 sealer. What good things had he not seen before? Mr. Sun Hai, is there a problem with this Essence Chi Earth Vein Map? Nietion asked in a daze. Sun Hai stood up agitatedly and took a step forward, saying, "Can I take a closer look?" Nietion's brows furrowed, and he handed the Essence Chi Earth Vein Map to Sun Hai. Sun Hai held the Essence Chi Earth Vein Map and looked at it for a long time. His expression was stiff for a long time. After hesitating for a while, he returned it to Nietion. Nietion looked at Sun Hai's astonished face and could not help feeling puzzled in his heart. He had also looked at the Essence Chi Earth Vein Map many times. There wasn't anything strange about it, but Sun Hai's mental strength was far above his. Perhaps he saw something else, which was why he was so astonished. Mr. Sun Hai, if you have something to say, you can say it directly, Nietion said solemnly. The others also had strange expressions. Just what thing could make this grand sealer from the Sumeru world so shocked? After hesitating for a long time, Sun Hai finally opened his mouth and said, "Young Master Nietion, the place where the Essence Chi Earth Vein converges, other than the dense heaven and earth spiritual energy, there is something even more terrifying." "What is it?" Nietion saw Sun Hai's astonished face. His pupils shrank slightly, and his heart almost stopped beating. Sun Hai paused for a while and said clearly, "Space-time boundary. Space-time boundary." Nietion cried out in shock. He felt his mind shake, and his entire body was in a daze. Space-time boundary? The others also cried out in shock, but they did not understand what these words meant. Space-time boundary was a very unique form of space-time. Other than man-made, it was usually formed by the overlapping of two different planes of worlds. The place where the Essence Chi Earth Vein was located was a space-time boundary. This undoubtedly meant that it was the place where the Sumeru world and the 3,000 lesser worlds intersected. In other words, there was a passageway that connected the Sumeru world and the 3,000 lesser worlds. As long as this space-time boundary was found, anyone could freely travel between the Sumeru world and the 3,000 lesser worlds. This was a very terrifying thing. Imagine if people like Musu and Mu Lei knew of the existence of this space-time boundary and came to the 3,000 lesser worlds, then the 3,000 lesser world would basically be finished.